I'm going to call the June 2nd, 2020 Select Board meeting to order. I have to read this thing before every meeting. So as a preliminary matter, this is a meeting of the Select Board. I am the chair. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So I'm going to call your name. When I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. So Doreen DeFazio.
Doreen DeFazio here.
Peter Carlson.
Peter Carlson's here.
Donna Stock.
Donna Stock here.
Ed Prisby.
Here.
Okay. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tim McInerney. He just texted me. He's running a couple minutes behind. So Rebecca Meekins.
Becca's here.
Then anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. So there are so many speakers tonight. It's hard for me to see everybody on the screen. So I'm gonna do my best here. So some people may not respond because I don't know if they're here or not. Andy DeShane. Was that you, Andy? I couldn't really hear you much.
All right. Yep, that was me. I'm here.
Okay, thanks. Brooke Paget.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay. Kaylin Pacier.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Elizabeth Spinney.
Yes, I'm here.
Ray Mead.
Ray's here.
Rick Elaine. I don't see Rick yet. Nick Childs, I saw.
Present.
Bob Egan. Don't see him yet. Bob Shamiko. Oh, I think he just walked away. Dan Elaine. Eric Matthew. Skip Courier.
Yep.
And Dan Crossan.
Here.
Okay. All right. When the other members or when the other people join, I will.
Tim is here now, Jennifer.
Who's here now?
Tim.
Oh, Tim McInerney. Can you say that you're here?
McInerney here.
Okay, thank you. All right, good evening. This is an open meeting of the Select Board and it's being conducted remotely consistent with the Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020 due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted on the town's website at www.grafton-ma.gov, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so as long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. For this meeting of the Select Board, we're convening by Zoom, and it's posted on the town's website on how the public can join. Please note that the meetings are being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast can be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda until, unless I note otherwise. There's some ground rules. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold off until your name is called. Remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until I yield the floor to you. And each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I hear some people. So there's a couple more people that weren't here before. So I'm just taking attendance. Bob Shemako, I saw you before. Are you here? Oh, there you are.
Here.
There's a phone number, so I'm not sure who that is. Is Ricky Elaine here?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Dan Elaine? No. Eric Matthew?
Eric Matthews here.
Okay, thank you. And then, oh, Bob Egan I already got, right? Yes. All right. There are, how can there already be?
You, Ricky, and Eric are on the meeting.
So am I supposed to,
Nope, you're muted and you don't have video.
Okay, yeah, if you guys can mute yourselves, that would be great.
I'm muted, so I'm just listening.
You're not muted. All right, I have some announcements. It's with sadness that the Grafton Lions Club has announced that they will not be holding their annual July 4th holiday concert this summer. The Community Preservation Committee is in the process of updating their community preservation plan. There will be 3 public forums held via Zoom. June 3rd at 7 p.m. where they're going to talk about open space and recreation. June 4th at 7 p.m. they'll discuss affordable housing. June 10th at 7 p.m. Is historic preservation. Please check the website for the Zoom links and for the link to the online survey to voice your thoughts on how to best utilize CPA funds. Please remember there is a Grafton Strong account. If you or someone you know is in need of COVID relief assistance, you can access an application for funds on the town's website by clicking on the red COVID banner. Town meeting will be held on June 20th, starting at 9 a.m. on the high school athletic field. The rain date will be June 21st. Details are on the town's website and a town-wide mailer will be sent in the next week with full details. So please watch for this mailer. All right, done with the announcements. Public comments. Peter, do we have any public comments?
We do, Madam Chair. First up was from the chair of the school committee, Laura Often. On behalf of the school committee, I'd like to clarify a few things that have been discussed in recent weeks regarding the FY21 budget, and we ask that this letter be read into the record. During a meeting on both May 19th and May 26th, it was stated that the superintendent intended to take a 2% salary increase. It was also stated that there was an agreement between Dr. Cummings and Mr. McInerney that unrepresented personnel in both the municipal unit and school department would receive a 0% pay increase, but that Dr. Cummings backed out of that agreement. In the select board Q&A on the 19th, Amy Marr clarified that Dr. Cummings' contract negotiations were not yet complete, so any information regarding his pay increase freeze was not public information and should not have been shared in a public meeting. It was also incorrect. Dr. Cummings had no intention in taking a 2% raise. As publicly discussed at a school committee meeting on May 26th, his intent is to take a 0% raise in FY21. There was never any formalized agreement regarding a salary freeze for unrepresented staff, which comprises of 7% of the school department, including some 40 secretaries, maintenance, support, and administrative staff. The idea was first floated at a TRICOM committee meeting by Mr. McInerney, and Dr. Cummings indicated that he would be open to the idea and would discuss the possibility with the school committee. Once it was revealed that some individuals would be receiving one-year pay freezes followed by a substantial increase in the following years, Dr. Cummings cited that this inequity and let Mr. McInerney know that he would move to reduce the school budget in a different manner. It is unfortunate that some staff and select board members continue to propagate the idea that the school department and municipal functions of the town are separate, competing entities, and that the school side is being properly funded while the municipal side is not. Neither side is being adequately funded, but it isn't good about sides. We're one town, one Grafton, and we need to work together for the common good. The cost of education in Massachusetts increased 5 to 6% annually, and this is an enormous challenge for a minimally funded district like Grafton. Still, we are confident that we can continue to rise to this challenge and get on with the important work of educating the children in our town. As always, if you have any questions about our spending or process, please do not hesitate to reach out to myself or Dr. Cummings. Thank you. Regards, Laura Often, Chair of Grafton School Committee. Next up, I have correspondence from Justin Wood, or public comment, I should say. Hello, dear Select Board. I would appreciate if this correspondence was read aloud during the June 2nd meeting at some point prior to any vote on the appointment of Brooke Paget to the CPC. Should I be allowed to attend a meeting as a panelist so I can speak, I'm more than willing to read my prepared words aloud myself, should the board not wish to repeat them. I do not wish them to be summarized. As you know, there is currently a vacancy on the CPC by the abrupt and sad passing of longtime Grafton resident Richard Schultz, who just recently passed away due to complications from COVID-19. Rick's membership as a member at large has been the subject of more than a handful of my private conversations over the past year, in part due to him not having attended one CPC meeting since I was appointed to there. And on behalf of the planning board, I have repeatedly told people how much I admire Rick, and after I heard from the CPC meeting how Rick was communicating with board members and suffering from other illnesses, also informed those same people of that situation. Many of those residents have approached me with an interest of, is there any opening I may want to ask to be on it? When I heard of Rick's passing due to COVID, those same residents were among my thoughts, though I felt it would have been disrespectful to Rick's legacy were I to let anyone, we have a vacancy, send a letter, and that you would be on the CPC so shortly after that tragedy. We in fact had a meeting of the CPC last night, May 28th, which opened with a moment of silence for Rick. This was our first CPC meeting since he passed, and had no further discussion or mention of the vacant seat, which I thought was quite appropriate. However, when I saw Brooke Paget on the agenda for an appointment of the CPC, I was shocked. I feel that appointing him this suddenly would be a disservice to Rick's legacy. We should advise this vacancy to the town and allow a few weeks for responses to come in to allow the public to declare their interest to be appointed to this wonderful committee. The summer months are slower for CPC membership needs. Last year, we didn't even start the process of discussing CPC projects for fall meeting until July, while votes didn't take place until several months later. Our next CPC meeting also is not until June 25th, so there is time to delay this. Brooke has served our town in various roles throughout the years, but I suspect he would agree with my belief that his wish is not to deprive others from participating in municipal government, whom may have had a desire to. As such, I urge the select board to table the vote of the appointment until at least June 16th to give a few weeks for the public to decide they would like to serve on CPC, or even better, until the first select board meeting in July so that the public may have a full month. I ask this out of respect for our residents and out of the memory and respect of Richard Schultz. Thank you, Justin Wood. Next one up is from Richard Whitney, 13 Greedy Drive. I'm writing you today about the opening in the CPC Commission. I am very interested in joining and participate in this group. As a lifelong resident of the town, I feel it's my responsibility as a resident to stand up and help out the town as being on this board. I feel like I could bring a lot of new ideas and old ones to the table. As I see your agenda, select board for Tuesday night, that you are going to nominate someone for this position, but I would like to have the chance to be on this too. I have tried to be on this commission for 2 years now and have been told it was full, no openings. Now I understand there's an opening and I would like to be a candidate for this position. I would ask you if you would please give me a chance to be on this board and let me do my part out in my town. Also, I would like to read for this public. Okay, that was just him giving that. And last but not least, I've got a letter from John Stevens regarding CPC opening. To the members of the select board, I received an email this afternoon inquiring about a vacancy on the Community Preservation Committee. See email message at the end of my email. It is my understanding that this vacancy was advertised during May and that there was only one applicant, Brooke Paget, and that application period closed on May 27, 2020. I recommend appointing Brooke Paget at your meeting on June 2nd, 2020. CPC is currently in the middle of a 6-month process to update Grafton's community preservation plan. In fact, there are 3 community forums planned during the next 10 days to solicit public input, which will be incorporated into the plan. It promises to be a busy summer, both with updating the plan and with soliciting, reviewing grant proposals during July and August. The committee needs an individual who is well-versed in the Community Preservation Act and who can hit the ground running on day one. Brooke has extensive experience volunteering for the town, including serving as a member of Finance Committee and serving as a selectman for over 15 years. While selectman, he was an early proponent of CPA, was instrumental in advocating for adoption of CPA in Grafton, and successfully shepherded the warrant article through town meeting in 2001. If appointed, I believe Brooke's background and experience will make him a great asset to the committee. Thank you for your consideration of my recommendation for this appointment. John R. Stevens, Chair. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. I do have a response to Laura's letter, but I'm going to wait until Selectmen's report for that. First on the schedule, coronavirus update. Tim?
Yes, sorry. I had a number of screens open while I was trying to get to you. Thank you. So today we did have one announcement for one new COVID case, bringing our total to 87. We know that the state is moving forward as of yesterday into phase 2. And then one screen share I'm hoping I can do with you all is relative to the state's dashboard that is pretty much on our website as a link, but I just thought I would share it so people could see the graphics that they're putting together at the state. So they're morbid in terms of the numbers reported today, total cases, total deaths today. But there is some good news in terms of the numbers and patterns relative to the health indicators. Certainly not a health expert, but this dashboard does give everyone the opportunity to visit this website, as you can see up here. And it's in our press releases too on the state's page. Just shows the decrease from April 15th until now relative to hospitalizations and positive cases and death rates and so forth. So it's a very long cumulative document, but it's going in the right direction, which is great for the Commonwealth and for the country. Unfortunately, we had a couple of days, or fortunately, had a couple of days where we had 0 cases, then we had 2, and then we had 1, and we've had 1 for the past couple of days now. So I just share this so people can get a visual and work through it. It's up to date every day, and you can log on to it and see the good and the bad relative to COVID-19.
Thank you. Are you anything else, or should I?
No, that's all I had for you.
Okay. Next, we have the library construction change directive. We have Andy Deshane and Brooke Paget here to talk about that. Andy, do you want to get started?
Yep, thank you very much. So I have the unenviable task of walking you through this update to this potential change order number 15. I think if you've all seen the backup on this, originally what was in front of you before, the total was just under $400,000. This is related to the removal of contaminated soil from the site. At the time, a couple months ago, the total here was just under 400,000, and the one I'm bringing to you right now, the update is just over $858,000. That is a huge increase from what it was before. And so I'd like to be able to walk you through that and give you some of the reasons why it is what it is.
Andy, am I sharing any screens for you? Sorry.
Not yet, and that's when we get to the part about the budget. I can share.
I apologize. Sorry.
That's okay. That's fine. So there are several factors that cause this thing to go double over what it was before. First one, there were a number of cases where we had to over excavate and actually produce more material. We have a geotechnical engineer who directs us when we get to the bottom of the planned excavation, and will tell us whether or not what we're looking at is structurally suitable or not. There were several cases across the site where we got to the planned bottom of excavation and had to keep going. That generated quite a bit of additional material that we weren't planning on. We had test borings ahead of time, but test borings only tell you so much. So that caused an excess of material that had to be removed. Second part of this was the material that was being removed had a much higher clay content than again the borings showed typically. This stuff was heavy, it was wet. We had 19 days of rain in April that didn't help. The project was, the excavation was actually estimated with volume, but we pay by the ton, which is not good for us in this case, because what we were moving was very wet, heavy material. What that does is it creates more truck trips because they can only take a certain tonnage per trip. And it increased the tonnage to each of the 4 facilities that we were taking it to, which drove up the cost as well. The other part of this that increased the material cost or the total tonnage was that the parking lot was not originally part of the estimated 5,000 yards of material to be removed. When the hazardous material, when the oil tank was removed and we had to go under a DEP order, that was applied across the entire site. So rather than just the building footprint and the detention pond that was originally part of the quantity, it got extended across the entire parking lot as well. So that really made a difference in terms of the amount of material. Even though that material that was coming off the parking lot was clean, it was still under the overall DEP order. So we still had to take it to a regulated site. And then the last one, which is a little bit smaller, but still we had some additional material around the oil tank. When we pulled that tank, we had to excavate pretty far down to get all that material around it. So that added to the total as well. So all in all, you know, it's not great news. The only thing I can tell you is that we're about 90% of the way through excavation. We've got a little bit left to do along the street. I couldn't tell you how many yards of that is left to go, but I could tell you that we're about 95% complete with excavation. So this number is going to go up a little bit more, but not significantly like it did between the last time I was in front of you and this one. Happy to answer any questions about this one. It's again, it's admittedly not good news, but I think overall, in general, we're doing the right thing on this site. We're cleaning it up. I'll tell you that at one point we did look at a different structural system for the library that would have allowed us to keep all this material on site, but we didn't think it was really the right move to make, leaving that kind of material in the ground on top of a public library. So I still think, I mean, they're my taxes too. I still think it's a good use of our money to clean this site up once and for all and be able to have a clear conscience moving forward.
Are there any questions from the board for Andy? Peter?
Yeah, thank you. Andy, thanks for that report. And like I said, being on the DPW committee recently, I understand the constraints and just the conditions which you're dealing with. And I do agree with you. It's the right thing to do to clean up that land. So to this date, do you guys anticipate any additional change orders that may put us in a precarious situation that you can maybe prepare us for in advance? That you can share with us tonight, like things that we may want to be watching out for?
Sure. So we've had quite a few discussions, as you might imagine, amongst the team. Both the architects, the engineers, the construction manager, the OPM have had quite a few discussions about risk and where the risk lies. Certainly, the biggest one is generally underground. We had some risk, some exposure around the existing building. We've got some masonry that we knew was going to have to be replaced, but that was budgeted and doesn't seem to be worse than what we thought. So I think that one is still fine. We still have we still have to deal with sort of the existing foundation where the existing building is going to meet the new building. Again, budgeted, but we still have to do that work. So I still think there's some risk there. Beyond that, I mean, the existing building doesn't get touched much. It's cosmetic mostly. And once we're out of the ground, everything is new construction. And so the amount of risk involved in that is much lower. Will there be change orders? Yeah, it seems like there's always change orders on public work these days. The drawings aren't perfect. Subcontractors know how to play the game. I'm not expecting anything significant to move the needle like this has. This is huge. But I do expect there will still be change orders, but I don't expect that we're going to go over budget. I think we're going to stay within our borrowing capacity, and I think we'll be okay. We're actively looking at ways to where we can maybe spend less, maybe find a way to trade out something else so we spend a little less money in different places. We've got a pretty robust furniture budget. And that's a place where we could save some money. So we're double checking everything and scouring the project right now to see where else we might be able to find some opportunities.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board members have questions? I have a quick question, Andy. So where are we in the contingency budget?
So the contingency is definitely been spent. Here, you know what? I'll pull up. Can I share my screen? If I can. You guys see that? So the contingency was gone a while ago. We had a couple of early change orders that put a big dent into that. You can see where we are sort of bottom line on this right now. Total cost to date, what we've committed to right now is 15.7. Our total borrow limit is 16.6, so we've got a current difference of about $920,000. You can see sort of how I've broken this down between soft costs, construction costs, and owner costs. If you'd like, I can walk you through a couple of those. So the engineering costs, the big difference there is related again to the contaminated soil. We had to bring in a licensed site professional to manage the DEP process and to do a lot of testing. Soil testing, groundwater testing, some other soil gas testing. Their fees were pretty high. They were about $183,000. So the majority of this is really for the licensed site professional that's managing the DEP process for it. The other chunk of that is really related to a peer review that the building department had us do. That we hadn't budgeted for. So those two things combined is what drove the engineering costs over. Construction costs have been like the change orders, and the owner costs right now. The difference there, the delta is primarily the interim library. Our costs on that have been extended because we're going to have a longer period of time. We're going to be renting that. And so there's been some additional costs to make sure that we had all the connectivity we needed over there, but also additional rent is driving that number up.
Thank you. I can't really see members if they have questions, but we have a couple in the Q&A from Justin Wood. Are we projected to be above the amount that the town meeting has passed for this project as a total? You just went over that.
No, we're not.
Oh, okay. Are we behind the planned construction schedule due to the unforeseen circumstances?
Yes, we already adjusted the schedule, so we're planning on being done about a year from now. I think it's June 20th of next year. So yeah, we've already done some updates with the construction manager about the schedule.
And then what is the current plan for the first phase of the parking lot paving right now?
Currently, we're planning on paving the binder in the fall, probably September.
Okay.
Jen, I just want to jump in. We had, and this is Brooke, as Andy would say, we had a robust discussion the other day about this soil removal. Just so the town doesn't think that we went in there blind, there was a contingency and a budget item for that removal and to look at those soils. And even though and Andy will have the numbers, they estimated 5,000, was it metric tons or what? I don't even know. What was it? 5,000 what?
Yards.
5,000 yards, right? It came out to be 10,000. How people in that line of work can totally get it 100% wrong is beyond me. But it's not as if it wasn't budgeted for. It just, when they started digging down there, it was much more extensive than anyone had thought. And as Andy had said, in some ways it's a benefit to the town, because if we had kept that building with the dirty soils underneath it, for many years people have complained about the children's library having some issues, and we're just kind of poo-pooed about it. But apparently there might have been something to that. And as Andy has already said, it's a good thing to take care of that once and for all and clean that out. It's a lot of money, and it's affected the budget a great deal. But as is also pointed out, we're still under budget, and we still have a cushion, although I'm sure we all know that's going to get eaten up. But there's a $900,000 delta, as Tim likes to say, right now. And hopefully we'll be able to do everything along with the robust furniture budget. But it wasn't like it wasn't known ahead of time. It just, we don't know what you don't know, I guess.
Okay. Is everybody done looking at Andy's screen? Can we take there? Thank you. So I can see everybody. Any other questions for Andy or Brooke? Okay. So Andy, are you looking for us to sign something tonight, or this is just an update?
Well, I think we had you guys vote on this PCO, this potential change order, or CCD, before. It is, like I said, it is going to change. This will end up being a solid change order, not a PCO. But yeah, in order to proceed, we need your approval to at least acknowledge this amount, so that we can continue on.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, so if I make a motion tonight, do I make it for the PCO 16 R4 for $858,794, or do you want me to read each PCO 15, 16, and 17 respectively?
No, this is just for 16 R4.
Okay, Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I motion that the chair sign change order PCO 16 R4 for the amount of $858,794 for the purposes of the library construction project.
Jen, you're on mute.
You're muted, Madam Chair.
Sorry about that. Okay. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none by roll call.
Carlson, aye.
Stock eye.
Fazio, aye.
Frisbee, aye.
Thomas, aye. Motion is carried. Thank you, Andy and Brooke, for coming out to talk about that.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks very much.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the farmer's market to provide an update on the plans for opening. So we have, I'm sorry, is it Kaylin or Kayleen?
Callan. Yep.
Callan, sorry, Callan. Callan and Elizabeth Spinney are both here. So I don't know if you want to start, Callan?
Actually, yeah, I'll take it, Callan. We had talked about this. So yeah, I'm a member of the Grafton Farmers Market Committee here with Callan tonight. And thank you for inviting us to talk about the farmers market and give an update on what we're doing. Because we're often getting the question from people as to whether or not the farmers market is going to be able to open this year. And so I'm happy to share with everyone that the answer is yes. On the farmers market committee, we've been working really hard to come up with different ways to make the market work this year. Obviously, as things kept changing, we kept kind of shifting our plan a little bit. But we've prepared a couple of different plans that we think are going to work really well. We've been working with the Board of Health to get their approval along the way and to talk with them to answer any questions, so that we can further our aims of both providing locally sourced food and products to the community, as well as providing a venue to help our local farms and other vendors. So this year, we are going to have both an online presence with an in-person pickup and a safe live market. Customers will have two options. With the online market, they can order products via a new website that we're working on, and then they can pick them up on the market on market day. And I'll explain how we're going to do that in a second. For market day, we have a layout of how it's going to work on the common. Would you like me to share that? I know you have it in your packets, but I can share my screen so everyone can see it if you want.
It would be good to share for the public to see.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Everyone good? Okay, so you can see on this, we have planned one entrance, which is going to be on the north side of the common, and then one exit on the opposite end. That way we keep people flowing, hopefully, and not, unfortunately, trying to prevent congregation, which has always been a nice thing about the farmers market, but we can't really do that this year. So vendors will be located on one side, as you can see, instead of on both sides of the sidewalk. And this is again to limit overcrowding. We're going to have 2 sanitizing stations, as you can see, one for visitors and one is going to be for the vendors. And then we're going to block off the other entrances so that, again, we can have some crowd control. So because we were going to have pre-orders made through our online system, we'll have a pickup location, which is going to be, as you can see, on the sort of back end of where the vendors are, separated from the vendors. And customers will be able to park in designated parking spaces at their specified pickup times. So we're going to be coordinating that as well. And that west side, where people often park to go to the farmer's market anyway. So a market member will be there and will either place the bagged pre-ordered items in their trunk, similar to how Koopmans is operating right now, or the customer might be able to pick them up at a pre-order table. We've seen this often at some of the restaurants that have been open during the pandemic. So some of those details we're still working out a little bit, but we have a volunteer who's working on getting custom signs made, sandwich board signs, that we're going to place at the entry points to make sure that people head in the right direction, that they have the correct information. We're also getting, or I think maybe we've already gotten, cones and barricades from the DPW to block off those other entrances, so that people can't get in there. We've been working with the vendors to make sure that they understand these protocols and procedures. And we're going to make sure that we provide customers with this information ahead of time via social media. Social media being the best option for us, the most efficient way for us. All of us on the committee have jobs and young or sort of young kids. And so we saw social media as the best way to get that information out to the most people the most efficiently. So unless you had anything to add, that's about it. Did you have anything to add?
Yep. I apologize. It's supposed to say sanitizing station. That was a recent change we had made in the middle there for the vendors as opposed to the hand washing station.
Any questions?
If you can take your screen share down, I can't see everybody. Thank you. Is it Donna?
Will masks be required by either vendors or the people that are coming?
The masks will be required for the vendors, and we are strongly suggesting that customers wear masks. We've sent out a social media post, and we'll have a sign at the market. So we're trying to strongly enforce customers to be wearing them, yes. But vendors will have to.
Thanks.
When is opening day? When are you going to open?
Scheduled for June 17th.
Any other questions? Right. And if people want to find out more information about the farmers market,
They
how
could
would they
look,
do
we
that?
have a Facebook page that has a lot of information and we'll provide updates on there, but that's really one of the best sources. We also have an email address. Do you want to share that?
Yep, so it's farmersmarketgrafton@gmail.com.
Thank you. So if people have questions, they can contact you directly.
Of course, yep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the update.
For having us.
Great.
Excuse me?
For-
Oh, okay.
Thank you for inviting us.
Yes,
Sure.
thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right. Next on the agenda, we have the Sustainability Commission benchmarking report. Ed.
Thanks, everyone. I had hoped tonight to have a full-fledged document for you. Unfortunately, we're still dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this. I do want to thank the members of my commission. They're very, very thorough, and nobody wants to put out anything that's going to give people any bad data. So where we are right now is we're looking for the last few data points on executive salaries. Those can be really difficult to get because, as we all know, everybody negotiates their executive salaries a little bit differently. And when you're reporting data on the overall value of a given contract, sometimes you get just the straight salary without any other benefits. And we're just double checking to make sure that we have all that. That having been said, I have a rough draft sitting in front of me that desperately needs a spell check, but is otherwise, I think, pretty good. There are some data points that we want to enter, but I think we're doing okay. So if you don't mind, I know we've got a long meeting tonight, but I do want to run through the basic points here. So as the spring has gone on and the community discussion has started to center around the override and why we need another override within 6 years, we started to discuss essentially what will the future of Grafton look like? What community do you actually want to live in? What community can you afford to pay for? What service levels do you expect? And where do we rank among comparison communities? I think the first step in determining where we go from where we are is to figure out, well, where are we right now relative to comparable communities? We started that journey this past fall, and we reached out to the Department of Revenue to identify who would be comparison communities for us to benchmark against. So we did that both on the municipal budget side and we did it on the educational side. And believe it or not, those turned out to be different communities for us. So we went to the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, who informed us that the towns of Ashland, Auburn, Bellingham, Holliston, Northborough, Oxford, and Uxbridge were supposed to be our sister communities. And then for the Department of Education, they actually had different communities, and we determined that we would use a measurement called combined effort yield to determine who our comparable communities were. Using this data, we identified Northborough, Agawam, Bridgewater, Petersham, Amesbury, and Norton as comp communities. Now, we didn't use all of those combined because the process would get unwieldy, but we did pick most of them. And then in addition, we added geographically contiguous communities with the recognition that a lot of our costs, as we all know, are driven by the market rate around us. So when we talk to our various prospective employees, when we talk to our union members, we're constantly being compared, for good or ill, fair or unfair, with our surrounding communities. And it would have been unfair, I thought, or we all thought, not to include some of those contiguous communities in our benchmarking report. obviously with the caveat that those communities aren't identified as comparable to us by the Department of Revenue or the Department of Education. So that process has yielded some interesting results. At a bare bones, I'll tell you what you mostly already know, or at least those people that are in this meeting, is that relative to our comparable communities, standard statistics, kind of vanilla statistics like average family tax burden, we're relatively middle of the pack. We are higher than Auburn and Bellingham. We're lower than Ashland, Holliston, Northborough. Obviously, Shrewsbury and Westboro are outliers. But then we started to take into account, I think, some more interesting questions.
All right, and can I just interrupt a second? It's really hard to follow you. We don't have any information ahead of time, or we don't have what you're looking at, or
yeah, so I don't,
or anything. So it's really, I'm having a hard time, you know.
Okay, well, I'll try and make this pretty brief. What I want to do is wrap this thing up. We're scheduled to wrap this up, or at least this draft of it, on June 8th, to go through the last data, to vote on a draft, and to publish something. At that point, it's just going to go up on the town's website. Anybody's free to read it. And we'll move on to the next stages, which are municipal cost drivers, school cost structure, income, and capital. All right. If there are any specific questions that you have about the process or any of our findings, I'd be happy to answer them now, to the best of my ability.
Does the board members have any questions? Are you requesting an extension of your charge? Wasn't your charge up January 15th?
It was. I would request an extension of that, given the amount of work involved and given COVID. It's been really difficult to move on to the second phase of this, considering, that all involves in-person interviews, and that's really hard to do right now.
Doreen?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ed, I would be fine, with an extension. You guys have put in a lot of hard work, and it needs to be completed. But I would request that perhaps information. I understand it's going to go up on a website, but since the charge went through this committee, it would be great if we could get a report and maybe just a summary from you in the coming weeks as well.
Sure.
Because I don't have questions to ask until I see it in front of me, and I would like the opportunity to ask some questions.
Sure.
Thank you.
Donna?
I was going to say the same thing. I haven't seen a word, so before I have any questions, I have to see the document.
Yeah, it's just my professional practice. I'm not going to put something out before it's ready. I mean, I'll give you, for instance, I'm looking through this, and I think there was we're talking about a potential talent employee pool that reads employee poor. I can't put that out right now. So we'll get through it and get all the data and get it out. It's just obviously COVID. Especially for the stuff that I'm looking for right now, it involves actually reaching out to each one of the clerk's offices or the select board offices for the comp communities and asking them to produce things that they're frankly not accustomed to producing to a stranger in the middle of a crisis. So it's just taking some time.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. Just hearing the date of June 8th, Ed, is that going to be enough time? I mean, that's next Tuesday.
Yeah, so I'm already in the process of wrapping up our last few data points. It shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, we'll move on to fire safety study. Peter, did you want to get this started because you're the representative?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate you accommodating the Fire Safety Study Committee. I want to hand this over to our chair, Mr. Ray Mead. He's going to go through the highlights of the fire study report that you all had a copy of, and some additional action items once we're completed. So if it's okay through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to hand the floor over to Mr. Mead.
That's fine.
Hey, good evening, everyone. I want to start off just by letting you know who's on the committee, and I know you guys appointed us, but it actually has been about a year Myself was on the committee, Rick Elaine, Bob Egan, Eric Matthews, Roger Currier, Bob Shemenko, Dan Elaine, Peter Carlson, and Nick Childs. I do have to say, I have served on many, many, many committees in this town. This has been the best group of people to work with on this project, and we had a lot of fun, but we got a lot of work done in a short amount of time. So I just want to go, as Peter said, I just want to do some of the highlights of the fire study. We were originally appointed in June of last year to take the MRI study and go through that and come up with priorities priorities on that study. Jeez. This pollen is killing me, and I'm inside. So what we did was we had our meetings. We met every 2 weeks. We had 2 public hearings, and we interviewed 3 fire departments. Fire departments that we felt were of the same size and caliber of Grafton, to find out how they operated their departments. So I just want to quickly go through those interviews very quickly. I'll start off with Millbury Fire. Millbury Fire has a unique situation. They have a part-time / full-time fire chief, Chief Richie Hamilton. He's retired from his career, and he acts as a full-time chief. They have 4 stations, 4 engines, a tower, rescue. I won't get into all the trucks. The department responds to EMS calls only as needed. And their dispatch is provided through the police department. Their organizational structure is a chief, deputy chief, 3 assistants, 4 captains, and 7 lieutenants. Staffing and recruitment. Currently, the department has 45 members, and that doesn't include the 6 recruits that they have going through the academy right now. Recruitment is done through a very active Explorer post, advertisements on Facebook, social media, and word of mouth. The town provides a retirement program for the firefighters through the town, a $10,000 life insurance policy. They also have a summer party and a winter party, which doesn't sound like that's that big of a deal, but when you're talking about getting people together and the camaraderie, that really works out well. They have department meetings all the time. We're in open communication. The average daytime response that they have to a call is 19 firefighters. The average call response after 5 p.m. is 45 firefighters. So they do have a good response time. So the department pays for all the uniforms. The gear is less than 10 years old, and they have received a SAFE grant to purchase fire cleaning equipment. Training is done every single week on Monday night. Everyone's required to have 8 hours of hazmat training. All members must attend 40% of the training sessions. The training schedule is posted 1 year in advance and coordinated by the chiefs. The new recruits are required to attend the academy training, firefighter 1 and 2, and get before they get promoted to a regular status. They all require physicals. Emergency operations, the department has full SOPs and SOGs. You're going to hear this a couple of times. Standard operating procedures, standard operating guidelines. They have full SOP, SOGs, and pre-plans are updated on a regular basis. Their fire prevention is done not by fire prevention inspections are done with a coordinator and 7 firefighters, and they perform all of the inspections. They are not full-time. The command staff and inspectors provide fire prevention in the schools. And 2 members of the department head up a grant writing committee and have been very successful in obtaining grants. Sutton Fire Department. Matt Belcito, Chief Matt Belcito, who used to be a chief in, a district chief in Millbury, is a full-time chief and has 2 full-time firefighters. They operate out of 3 stations. The organizational structure is a chief, 3 district chiefs, 6 captains, a chief, 3 district chiefs, 3 captains, and 6 lieutenants. Their staffing and recruitment, they have 35 firefighters, 2 of which are full-time. Recruitment is done somewhat like Millbury, Explorer Post, Facebook, social media, word of mouth. The department offers a length of service award after 10 years. They have regular officers meetings and department meetings where the chief announces at the beginning of the meeting that there are no ranks in this room, and anybody can say anything that they want, and it's all taken in, and everybody gets a say. The town pays for uniforms. They have also received the SAFE grant. Training, they have 480 hours of academy training for new recruits. There's training held every week, and it's held at night and during the day for people who work nights or can't make it during the day. Firefighters are required to attend 50% of the trainings, and officers are required to attend 75% of the trainings. They're working on providing in-house training for new recruits and bypassing the academy training. All members receive 8 hours of hazmat training. Emergency Operations Department has full SOPs and SOGs, and they are updated on a regular basis. They utilize the incident command system, and first responder is provided for the ambulance service during the day by the full-time firefighters. The chief and 2 full-time firefighters provide all the inspections and have done the pre-plans throughout the town. Holliston Fire. Chief Michael Cassidy's been the chief since 1999. The department operates an ambulance separate from the fire department. They operate out of 5 stations. The department provides 24-hour dispatch with a combination of firefighter personnel and civilians. Organizational structure is the chief, deputy chief, 1 EMS deputy, 5 captains, and 4 lieutenants. Staffing and recruitment. Currently, the department is maxed out at 49 firefighters, with 12 recruits on the waiting list, 39 EMT paramedics, and 4 full-time dispatchers. The recruitment is done through an intern program in the high school and local colleges. Word of mouth, Facebook, and open houses, and a very active Explorer post. Retention. The firefighters receive all of the same benefits that the town employees receive. Health insurance with a 60-40 split, life insurance, Middlesex County retirement. Firefighters can retire after 20 years with full benefits. Keep in mind, these are all call fire department firefighters. They receive a stipend each month, plus an hourly rate for call. They have a very extensive coverage program for the chiefs and the officers. Training, they have 6 certified academy trainers on staff. All of their firefighter 1 and 2 training is done in-house, which saves an enormous amount of money and an enormous amount of time. They have training every week, and all firefighters must attend a minimum of 24 training sessions. I won't even get into how much they get paid, because they do get paid quite a bit. Emergency operations, the department has full SOP, SOGs. They have a safety officer at each firefighter, each fire. Individual companies visit the businesses in multiple municipal buildings to familiarize themselves with buildings' alarms. Firefighters are assigned to trucks. They operate an on-scene decon unit. And the department has in place a command backup system. Fire prevention, the fire chief is the fire inspector for the town. Pre-plans have been completed for all high-risk buildings and updated on a regular basis. Apparatus replacement, they replace apparatus within a program and replaces engine. They replace engines every 20 years, ambulances and command vehicles every 5 years. They just put a new $440,000 engine in service, and they have received multiple grants. So those are the three departments that we, and keep in mind, all call. The only, in Holliston, the only person that's full-time is the 4 dispatchers and the chief. The departments are all call departments. So getting on to the findings and recommendations. We all received a copy of the MRI report. We had the interviews with the 3 towns. We had 2 public hearings and received comments from people who showed up. The list of priorities are as follows. Now, this is based on the MRI report, and this is
Ray,
what
I'm sorry, can I interrupt just a second?
Sure.
Just to let people know that the information you're sharing, the study was in the packet, so it's available on the website in case people want to follow along, correct? Thank you.
Yeah, yep, okay.
Okay, sorry.
So
Go ahead.
priorities. So this is what we had to come up with first, and I'll be honest with you, it took a little while, but we did come up with the list of priorities. So number 1 was organizational structure, management, and administration. Staffing, recruitment, and retention. Training. Emergency operations, fire prevention, mission, vision, and value statement. The table of organization. Community risk assessment, and I'll explain all of these. Fiscal forecasting and capital planning. Benchmarking, comparative analysis, and facilities and apparatus. I'll briefly explain each one of these, and I will do it briefly. The organizational management and construction. In administration. Currently on paper, the department has a chief, administrative assistant, a deputy chief, 2 assistant chiefs, 3 captains, 6 lieutenants, 60 firefighters, and 15 auxiliary members. That is a full accompaniment of the department. The current department positions are chief, administrative assistant, deputy chief, part-time inspector, 3 captains, 6 lieutenants, 42 firefighters, and 4 auxiliary members. The fire committee recommendation that's coming out of this study is a full-time chief, administrative assistant, a deputy chief who would be a call member, a full-time inspector at the rank of captain, a full-time fire prevention training officer and safety at the rank of captain, captains in cars, and I'll explain that, 60 firefighters and 15 recruits with a minimum of 10 new recruits per year. That is our goal. I have to tell you that is quite a goal. And it's not something that's going to take 2 months, 4 months, 6 months, or anything like that. It's going to take an enormous amount of time. So under the full-time chief, one thing that I want to tell you, I want you to notice, is how many times the word create is used in this. Because it really means a lot, and it really tells you the amount of work and the amount of things that full-time staff or part-time or call people have to do to make a department. So the full-time chief would be a strong chief, have overall management of fire department emergency operations, creating standard operating procedures, SOPs, creating emergency operations procedures, create emergency operation coverage procedures, fire alarm protocol, fire dispatch policy, a training program, community risk pre-plan assessment, internal coverage program utilizing all offices, including a stipend process, interagency work, all annual procedures and testing, create facilities and maintenance program, vehicle maintenance program, budget creation, fiscal forecasting, writing and procuring all grants, creating a recruitment and retention program, an onboarding system for new recruits, create hiring and interviewing HR system for new employees and recruits, Integrate the offices in budgeting and procurement that aligns with the town purchasing system. Procure a fire management software system and connect all fire facilities to the town server. Create a mentor program for the fire department members to allow future advancement for all ranks and all firefighters. And create a mission and vision and values statement. That is an enormous job. That's an enormous job for a full-time person. And it's an enormous job for a call person, for a person part-time. It's very, very difficult to do. And that is going to be, the amount of workload here is going to limit the amount of people that you're going to get to apply for this position. The deputy chief, which would be a call firefighter, second in command for overall management of the fire department and emergency operations, and stands in when the chief's not available. Provides coverage and is responsible to create an officer backup program. Assist the chief in duties, responsibilities, and requirements. And then we'll get to the fire inspector. Overall management of fire inspections and programs. Create a fire inspection program including annual inspections. Procure a fire inspection management software program to conform with state and town standards and be integral with the fire reporting and fire prevention programs. Responsible for all fire inspections, responsible for all plan reviews, attendance at select board meetings, planning board, and etc. Required to respond to all fire calls while on duty in a non-command position. Work with the fire chief and fire prevention officer to create and present fire prevention programs for the public, school district, and private school facilities. Assist the chief and assist the fire prevention officer in training. Fire prevention training and safety officer full-time. Overall management of fire prevention training and safety officer programs. Create a fire prevention program that encompasses all residents, commercial, industrial, municipal, healthcare, public, and private educational system. Procure fire prevention management software. Create a firefighter training program for existing firefighters and officers. Training program will cover all levels of basic training through advanced training procedures, including CPR and first responder. Create an in-town training program for new recruits to provide them with the required training to obtain firefighter 1 and 2 certification. Record keeping of all firefighter training, including submissions to the state fire marshal's office. Create a firefighter and fire ground safety officer program. Respond to all fire calls while on duty in a non-command position. Assist the fire chief. I do want to say, that, and I said it kind of slow when I said that, to respond to calls, to fire calls while on duty in a non-command position. And we went over this and we talked about the rank of these people, and the fire prevention officer, the training officer, and everything like that. And these positions should be at a rank of captain. We felt that to maintain the call department which is what our goal is to maintain the call department. One thing that we're not looking at is we're not looking at 10 years from now saying we want 20 full-time guys. It's all firefighters. That's not what we want. So they would not be, these positions would not be command oriented during their work shift. The call captains would serve as backup to the chief and deputy chief in their absence and have mobile radios and repeaters installed in their personal vehicles. The individual captains can decide to go right to the scene of the fire or not to the station, and response will follow the emergency operations coverage procedure put together by the deputy chief. Lieutenants will assist the captains in emergency operations, attend all required training sessions. Firefighters $10 required training sessions. All firefighters are required to have firefighter 1 and 2 certified prior to appointment to regular status. That's what they have right now. Current firefighters who are not certified as firefighter 1 and 2 will have 5 years to complete the course and get certified. Recruits perform firefighter duties and attend the training. Recruitment. Recruitment of new firefighters will be handled by a committee consisting of the chief, deputy chief, fire inspector, fire prevention officer, and members of the department with a maximum of nine on that committee. The committee will be tasked with creating a program to seek new firefighters through advertising, social media, word of mouth, open houses, and possibly the creation of an Explorer post. The committee would be required to onboard and train a minimum of 10 firefighters per year. Retention of firefighters. It's imperative to retain the current and new firefighters in the Grafton Fire Department and create a program to encourage firefighters to stay on the job. Creation of a coverage stipend program based on the Officer Coverage Program will be put together by the deputy chief. Retirement. Currently, the town pays $100 a year that a firefighter has served every year for 10 years or after 10 years on the job. So after 25 years on the job, you get $2,500 in one check. The Fire Study Committee is proposing that if a firefighter retires after a minimum of 10 years, the town would then calculate the highest 3 years' salary and award the percentage of the retiring firefighter as follows. 10 years plus would be 40%, 15 years, 60%, 20 would be 80, and 25 would be 100. An example, firefighter retires after 16 years, the top 3 years of pay equals $15,000. The retirement would be $9,000. After 25 years, the payout would be $15,000. That is not a lot of money for doing what these guys do. Life insurance. Provide life insurance at the same level that the town employees receive health insurance. Offer health insurance at the town's rate and percentage to all firefighters who want it. Station amenities. Provide Wi-Fi. I can't even believe that we have that on the list. Provide Wi-Fi, computers connected to the town system and fire management program. Cable TV service. iPads for the trucks with the GIS systems, facility information and fire management programs, general station renovations. Onboarding program. Create an onboarding program for new recruits and firefighters to receive SOPs, benefits, turnout gear, introductions of command staff and company members. Install washers and dryers so firefighter gear can be cleaned on a regular basis. Provide a second set of firefighting gear to all firefighters so that when gear is in the cleaning phase, firefighters will be able to respond to calls. Training needs to be conducted on a weekly and monthly basis from basic to advanced. Firefighter 1 and 2 certification needs to be done so that recruits can advance to a regular status and existing firefighters can receive certification. The goal is to have all Grafton firefighters certified in firefighter 1 and 2 as a minimum. The study committee has set a mandatory 48 hours per year for training. And that includes firefighter 1 and 2 CPR and first responder training. The fire prevention training officer, along with the chief, will create a training program and schedule 1 year in advance, including basic to advanced firefighter 1, 2, CPR, and first responder. Training will take place at night, on weekends, and during the day to accommodate firefighters' work schedules. Emergency operations. Emergency operations spans from alarm calls, structure fires, brush fires, natural disasters, terrorist active shooters, mass casualties, plane crashes, and regular EMS calls, plus many more. The chief will be responsible, along with the command staff and the department officers, to create an emergency operations program along with the appropriate standard operating procedures and standard operating guidelines to be able to respond to call. Fire prevention, the chief and the fire prevention officer are responsible to create a fire prevention program that encompasses all residential and everything else. Mission, values, and statement, the chief will be responsible to create a mission, values, a vision and values statement with input from the entire department. GFD table of organization, the chief will create a table of organization based on the report of the fire study committee. The goal of this committee is to maintain a call department. The chief will also be responsible to create SOPs, SOGs, requirements, and qualifications for advancement through the ranks of the department. Community risk assessment process will be created and prioritized by the chief. Final assessment and pre-plans will include all officers and firefighters, including all members of the department. It will educate everyone to the current risks in the community and allow them input on the pre-plans. Fiscal forecasting and capital planning is the responsibility of chief with input from the officers. Chief will put together a 5-year capital plan and vehicle replacement program. Benchmarking and comparative analysis. This is the responsibility of chief to determine and create a report that compares the size, ability, and training of Grafton Fire Department as it relates to departments of similar size. Facilities and apparatus. The chief, along with the officers of the department, will be responsible to create a program that addresses the facility needs and an ongoing evaluation of existing apparatus. Station 2 and Station 3 will require renovations to provide adequate facilities to house firefighters and upgrade the buildings to current codes. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our report. I read it fast. A lot of work went into it. A lot of ideas. I think commending the committee. We did just a great job on this. But we need to get it implemented. As I said, the word create was used a lot. Establish was used a lot. So there are a lot of things that need to be done, and it's not something that can wait, and it's not something that that we want to have wait. So I don't know if you guys have any questions, or somebody else on the committee wants to say something, or.
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, thank you for all your hard work. The committee, I know, worked really hard over a long period of time to give us this report. Is there anybody else on the committee that wishes to chime in? Just some of you, I can't see you. So if you want to, just unmute yourself now and jump in. Okay, I'm not seeing any, so I will ask the board if there are any questions for Ray or the committee. Doreen?
Thanks, Jen. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So first of all, I also just want to say thank you and commend this committee for all the hard work that has been put into this so far. So for those of you who don't know, about 10 years ago, I did my my capstone for my graduate degree on the Grafton Fire Department. And so even hearing all of this information, so it's near and dear to my heart from that. And I also work with Chief Belcito over in Sutton and know him very well. And I also know Ricky Hamilton very well from my interview and also just relationships with other communities. So I'm happy to hear of the collaboration between, in particular, those two neighboring communities. And this is, for me, I have a couple of questions tonight, but I'm still digesting. Even someone who is familiar with this is a lot of information for me to digest. So I may come back with more questions. So my initial ones, and this isn't in any particular order, I'm curious of the recommendation of a strong chief and, you know, how that came up and why the advisory committee is recommending that. And, you know, I'm not even sure, like, are one of those three communities have a strong chief, or why do you think that would work particularly well for Grafton? How did that come into the final report? That's my first question.
Holliston has a strong chief. Millbury and Sutton do not have a strong chief. The department, the department as it used to be, had a board of fire engineers. So the board of fire engineers ran the department, and the chief actually reported to the board of fire engineers. That's not the case now. And in this scenario that we're talking about, there isn't that board of fire engineers there. So the best thing to do is to adopt a strong chief position, and that's what we would have to do, is to adopt that and let the chief run the department.
And if I can add, also, we're working off the MRI study, and our goal was to recommend their findings or disapprove their findings, and we went along with their strong chief because they recommended it as well. Yep.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And then another question is, one thing that I noticed tonight, or was reminded of tonight, is how well the retention in training programs are, particularly in Millbury, I feel. And I read in the report that there was, for retention purposes, for example, there was recommendation of a stipend. And I just want a little more information on that. So, what in particular are you drawing from these other communities as far as retention and recruitment? Because I know that's a big part of this. I don't know if any of you, including Peter, wants to speak about that.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair. And Ray, please interrupt me and fill in from some of the gaps I missed. So someone being somewhat new and thought I was somewhat familiar with the fire department and just where compensation is. From the report and from the studies of the other surrounding towns, we found that stipend component is absolutely critical for retaining firefighters who work, who operate within the town. Ultimately, what I think it came down to, and Ray or Rick or anyone else in the committee, please feel free to chime in. But I think we all identified that one of the risks with our call department is how they're compensated today for their time and risk to the community. So that's really where that stipends come from. And if you notice, we didn't actually say what that stipend should be. I think that should be something that is studied further and something that is developed sooner rather than later.
For example, in Holliston, their hourly rate is quite a bit higher than us. But they also have a coverage program where on the weekends, every 13 weeks, one officer has to take the weekend coverage. The chief down there works from 6 a.m. on Monday until 5 p.m. on Friday. And then the coverage takes over from there. That officer gets, I think it was $471 for the weekend. Now, keep in mind, he can't go anywhere. He can't have a few beers or anything like that. He's on call. But they also have a mentor program. So someone else that rides with them on the weekend that also gets a stipend, I think of $100 or $150 to mentor these people into officers and things like that. They also get $75 per training. So right now, the Grafton Fire Department, if you go to a training and it's a 2-hour training, and again, $22 an hour or whatever it is, you get $44 an hour. This is $75 an hour. So let me put it this way: you don't get on a call department to make a lot of money, because you don't. You never will. But we really need to get to the point where we compensate firefighters doing the job that they do, and that's part of the retention.
Yeah, and if I can add also, the biggest part is that health insurance and that life insurance type of thing. A lot of the other towns have self-contractors that work in town mostly, or just outside of town in the surrounding towns, who still respond they're leaving their job, they're leaving their livelihood, and there's no payment because they're self-employed. So they have nothing to gain. So taking out health insurance through the town and getting into that group, they have that option to do that. That's a retention point. Having that stipend, having that extra pay for responding day call, those towns have that, and they have a better response time because most of the people are working either in the town departments or in town self-contractors or just on the outskirts, where a lot of our firefighters work outside of town and regular jobs, and they don't have the option to leave. Even if they did leave, they would be too far away to respond.
I'd also like to add that the 3 fire departments that we met with have a comprehensive recruiting and training program that starts off from bringing in getting the right people to join, to nursing them through the initial phases, getting them on board, getting them comfortable, getting the basic training for them under their belts from the fire department before sending them to the state academy to get the higher end trainings, and then working all the way through the officer training, all the way up to the chief command training. So it's comprehensive. We just don't have that.
Thank you. Doreen?
Yeah, thank you all for your feedback. I just have one more quick question tonight, and that is, Ray, you mentioned a bunch of times the words create and establish all over this report, which I recognize. I also just want to know how much of this happens already, and you don't have to get into detail. It's just, for a quick comparison to the board, I'm looking at this, and I know a lot of it is going to have to be brand new and created and established, but how much of this are we doing already? Are we starting from square one, or are we starting at 30%, or where are we?
Well, let me say this. The department is doing the best that they can right now with the people that we have. When you see create and when you see establish, those things are not in place. So there's some things, but not a lot. But as I went down that chief's list, and I what that chief is going to be responsible for, and what those 2 captains are going to be responsible for, an enormous amount of work. This, as I said, this thing is going to take years. I would look at it and and say it's probably going to take 3 years to get all of this stuff in place, and it may be longer than that. It's an enormous amount of work. Most of it is not in place at this point because it can't be done.
To be blunt, to be blunter than Ray, which is a challenge. We have no health and safety program. We have no standard operating procedures. We have no pre-planning for the buildings in our town. We have no training and recruitment plan. We're just no. So we got to get at least up to speed with the surrounding towns. We have been lucky.
And if I can add as well, we're very fortunate to have the chief that we have that works right in town, responds to 90% of all calls, leaves work to do so. But the paperwork, the extra work, the ordering, the taking care of business, taking care of each station, all the guys that are on call as well, is very difficult. And so like what you're saying, Doreen, is we have a lot of stuff in place, partially as a call department, because we do what we can do when we can do it, and fill in the blanks. As you know, your capstone was done 10 years ago. The MRI study is almost 4 years old, and all these recommendations that both of those studies have done, nothing's been done. And we are running out of time. We are short 2 district chiefs that retired, that nothing's been done. We're on a part-time inspector who had to go off for retirement reasons because he couldn't make any more money, and then come back on after the first of the year. He was able to make more money, so he's back in doing it. Now he can only do what he can do where people aren't there. This is going to explode when it opens up, because all the sales that are happening right now of house sales are being delayed. They're still going to have to get inspections when it opens up, and it's going to be a lot of work for an inspector to catch up with all this stuff. And if we don't act on some of this stuff very quickly, very soon, we're going to be way behind the 8 ball. And we have retirements coming up shortly. The chief, myself, and a few others that are getting up in age that is going to explode. And we need to act.
We've already received some OSHA violations against the fire department, which I'm sure you're all aware of, that have to be addressed.
I do want to say that one of the things that we talked about from the first meeting is this committee was only going to talk about what the department needed in the future. And I want to make that clear, that we are not saying anything about anybody on the fire department or anything. We are only here to talk about the future. And that's really all we want to talk about.
Yeah, I just want to add some, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some context. So, like Ray said, it's not about the existing department. The department functionally is a good fire department. I mean, the firematics and the things that happen during fires, accidents, etc. It's an excellent department. What we're seeing is just the increased administrative burden that faces all fire departments in the United States. And the majority of fire departments in the United States are still volunteer and call departments. The problem is that you have to be able to stabilize and reach that goal that the plan alludes to, which is that those administrative burdens, all the requirements that we have both from the local, state, and federal government, we have to comply with, and therefore we have to. How do we fulfill that need? And that is to have a strong chief, a person that is going to work and do all that stuff behind the scenes, which is the majority of the time, and then the stuff that we're already doing very well, which is the firefighting. But this is a mix. We need to maintain a call department because the cost of a full-time paid department is immense. And obviously in this time, looking at a full-time paid department doesn't make sense. In addition, you already have good firematics, as I said. It's the recruitment, the improvement of these stations, and improving of morale. And I think that, those things all put together, this is a great plan going forward. And I believe that, the morale of the department depends on this. If you don't adopt this plan in full, there's a lot of naysaying already, which is that, okay, you guys did a great job. Everybody thinks and then the selectmen and the town administrator will turn this down. And I just want to put a word in that it's extremely imperative and important that you look closely at these recommendations. The initial study was excellent. And from what, Ray and the other folks have done on this committee, is a lot of hard work, and we've basically concurred with a lot of the recommendations in this report, and the adoption as a whole, I think, is really what is needed here.
Donna?
Thank you. I agree that the MRI study I read when I was campaigning last year, and I talked to a few of you that are actually on this call right now, and it was very candid and had specific recommendations. But this is a long time initiative. We've been talking about the need for us to go beyond on-call for a number of years. And I think I agree with the recommendations that you hear, and I'm glad that you summarized them in a way that we can take actionable items. I know it's going to be difficult. It's going to take some time, but I think we've got that commitment. The town administrator has put things in the budget for next few years to help address some of these things. I guess my one question I have is about the training component, because Nick, I agree with you with what you said about that. Is there an opportunity to collaborate with some of our neighboring towns as we all have new recruits or bring our current personnel up to speed on what they need for the training?
Yes, there is. You can, the Grafton Fire Department works with Millbury all the time and with Sutton. I know that members of the department have attended Worcester fire trainings. I did it myself, and Bob Egan did it. You can do all of that stuff, but again, it takes someone to coordinate the whole thing, and that is the issue, that you can't have a full-time job and have a part-time job or another full-time job and satisfy everybody. It's just, all that would work out. Yeah.
And I agree too that we need a full-time fire inspector. I think that's, as Rick just said, something that's necessary for our community right now. So thank you for outlining this for us.
Ed?
I guess this question goes to town staff. What are our plans to begin implementing this proposal if we don't have an override pass this year? What does that look like for the proposal?
I have two pieces. Before I answer your question, these guys do incredible work when they respond to a call, and there's a lot of pieces and a lot of personalities that go into making this work. So the proposal that they've come with in analyzing this 250-page report done by MRI 2 years ago is amazing work. And then to respond to calls for $22 an hour and go into a burning building is just an amazing thing. And we call it luck. It's probably a combination or a variant of both, right? Just people just work really hard in the environment that they're in. And it's amazing we haven't had some catastrophic losses, but thankfully we haven't. So I just want to say thank you to recognize both the work on the study and taking the report, and then the secondary subjects in the later part of the recommendation, which listed out all of these pieces, and for serving on the fire department, because it's a labor of love. It's nothing less than that. So we have budgeted for fiscal 21 the chief's position that is in there as a line item that's budgeted. We applied for the SAFER grant last two Thursdays ago. We have been anticipating this. We developed a position profile, which just a lot of this is going to take some time to digest in terms of the financial impact. But all organizations need the leadership that's articulated in the study and then further solidified in the committee's report. So we're going to start with that, and at least that's my recommendation. First is a funding problem because we don't have all of these positions in the budget. The grant that we applied for was a 3-year SAFER grant for $535,000. It only pays 75% in year 1, 75% in year 2, and then 25% in year 3. But the caveat to that is it only pays 75% of an average firefighter's salary. So it's not like we're going to carry the entire chief's salary through that SAFER grant. So I just want to make that clear that it's budgeted. That if we get the grant, we can do other things or augment the payroll for that chief's position. But the position profiles developed. I strongly recommend that we go to an assessment center for qualified candidates. We have 2 proposals, both from MRI and from Public Safety Consultants, which is in, they were here in the old building down here at the police department, old building down at Cable's End, but they were a $6,000 cost. MRI was $8,250 for the assessment center. So we would want to form a committee to do interviews based on successful completion of the assessment center. Certainly want 1 or 2 or 3 of the members on this committee to be on that panel to make a recommendation to ratify the appointment to the board. I need to investigate a little bit more on the strong chief component, because we really need to have this is a very daunting task, as Ray said. This is a very special person that we'll have to find. So long answer, I understand that, but there's a lot to digest in terms of cost analysis in this recommendation, and I need to back check it against the MRI piece so I can verify we took all of those recommendations into account. And it appears you have. There's no doubt about it, but I still want to go back and look at that study.
A quick follow-up. So Additionally, there was recommended a deputy chief and a full-time fire inspector. What would a failure to pass this override mean for those positions in the immediate future?
Well, you wouldn't, if you don't pass the override, Tim's got it budgeted, but if you don't pass the override, you're not going to get an inspector and you're not going to get a training officer, safety officer, fire prevention officer, or anything like that. And again, you can hire a chief and you can hire one guy and he's got to do all of that work. You really need a full-time inspector and you really need a training safety officer just to get all of this work done. The override is and you guys know I was there. I spilled my guts on an override in my even though I'm not in favor of overrides, but this is necessary to make this and get this department to move forward. And really, that's, as Ricky said, people are retiring. We're just going. We had 2 district chiefs retire. They have not been replaced. I'm not sure why, but they haven't been replaced. We need to move on. And unfortunately, it's going to take money to do it. It's going to take a good chunk of change to do it and do it right.
Ed.
Just one quick follow-up. I do want to thank you guys for all the work that you put into this. Obviously, this was a really thorough document. I see how many people you interviewed, and I know the amount of work that goes into this sort of thing. So I really want to thank you. Obviously, we can all read this and thank you for your work and give you platitudes about how important public safety and fire safety is to all of us and to the community. But it's on us now in this group to make sure that this becomes something more than just a report, that becomes an action item, and that we follow through on this. And I asked you these questions, kind of knowing the answer to them, to make clear that there are consequences to this very good plan that you drew up if we don't have the resources to follow through. And the last thing anybody, I think, here wants is for this to end up on the shelf and just to be another plan full of good intentions. We need to follow through on this and give our full support to implementing this program as soon as possible.
If I can just add, so the main thing on this is, like I said, with Doreen's capstone, that study, a lot of the same things were brought up in that same study, if you read that study. If you go into the MRI report, the same stuff. This has been going on for 15 years. Many different boards, 3 different administrators. And like I say, nothing has changed. We're very, very fortunate. We have the department that we have, the guys who are dedicated. And I want to stress, we are 3 stations, but we are 1 department, 3 captains, lieutenants. We work together. We get the job done. We don't have the choice of saying it's time to go home. I got to leave now. We finished the job and we're very fortunate to have that. So, but we can't keep putting this off.
Donna?
I recognize what you're saying, Rick. But the motion tonight is to accept the report as presented. Do we need more information in terms of the cost impact, Tim, for all of this? In a timeline? What can happen in one fiscal year?
I'm on a dual track, right? I mean, we always knew that the chief was kind of like the biggest thing in the report. Not having the detail, that's the track we've been on. So saying this tonight and needing to do some analysis, I certainly need to figure out what those costs are for all those recommendations. I would say that we don't want to build, there's nuances, game time decisions that the chief who's on the ground needs to make. It's good to have the parameters in which they will work and the goal we want them to get to, but things change. We're not just gonna, set the environment and we want him or her to build the environment around those parameters. I don't think you can just cast it and say, this is what we're going to do, because things may change in that environment. So I think you need the leadership role filled first.
So if I can also add that our original charge from the board to us was not to consider money, which we very hard to do, and we stayed away from that. We gave some recommendations and we went searching for what some of those costs might be and where they lie, but we have not. The committee didn't put any numbers together on any of that stuff other than preliminary, what it could be for our knowledge. But our charge was not to consider money at all. It was to just go over the report, recommend or disapprove of their study.
Peter?
Thank you. So if you guys recall, a couple of months ago, we took a vote that was brought upon me from my committee with regards to setting up what that command structure is, and we all unanimously agreed about what was recommended prior to the final report coming out. I believe that the entire committee unanimously felt that it was imperative that the positions that were mentioned be immediately funded by any means necessary. And I get, unfortunately, not everyone kind of saw eye to eye to that, but we do have that fire chief funded. I will say that I will echo what Mr. Mead and what Mr. Lane has said, and Mr. Childs, that the training component of it too is, I think, a daunting task. And keep in mind, when we say create and when we say, set up, there is a foundation there that is going to need assistance from day one. And that is going to be around formalized training. And that's going to be a full-time task going forward with our department, especially with what I've learned over the past year about all of the requirements that goes into just running an effective fire department. So I do want to remind the committee that we did agree to that, or we did set out and voted on that a couple of months ago. And tonight, that this report, to Mr. Lane's point, is that it stayed away from budgeting figures. And that's going to be, to what Mr. Frisbee had said, it's going to be up to us working with the town administrator about prioritizing and getting those figures and those amounts in there so we can see what the liability is to the town moving forward.
I just want to clarify, Tim, can you just clarify, in year one of the override, there is not a fire position right now, right? Because we're having to make up for our lost revenues due to COVID. It's year two that the captain's position is funded, and then the other positions are funded, correct?
Yeah, we were always, not knowing the full context of the study and knowing that revenue was short, we can prioritize anything. For the new 2 million on average that we get every year, there can be priorities that can be set by the board, and we can move forward with funding those things in other years. But in 21, there is no other staff slated from the override for this particular endeavor, if you will. We could make that a priority, but right now it's not in our model.
Jen, I just want to bring something up, and it was actually on the news today. And it has to do with training. Concord Fire Department responded to a rescue call at the Concord golf course today. There was a 20-foot hole that was dug for a irrigation system, and someone had fallen into it. And the deputy chief said it tested all of our training, everything that we learned, and it tested us to get someone out of a technical rescue out of a 20-foot deep hole. Anything can happen any day. And if you're not ready for it and you're not trained for it, there's going to be an issue. And so, I went before the board. They said it was going to cost $418,500 for the first year. I'll say this. If you don't fund those 3 positions, you're making a major mistake. You are not going to get anything done not funding every single position, because you'll have a chief, You won't have fire prevention, you won't have inspections, you won't have training. So every one of those positions needs to be funded. Whether it comes from the override, and again, you guys can spend the override however you want. Whether it comes from a grant, whether it comes from an override, whether it comes from the budget. All three positions need to be funded.
Okay. All right, I don't understand a question here. Justin, you didn't write a question, so. I'm sorry, I'm reading stuff. So Justin Wood, 5 Garden Street. First, my comment, I appreciate the board accepting this in full. We should show the support to our first responders, and we desperately need a staffed fire department. Additionally, in the select board packet today, there's a potential motion for establishing a charge for the chief search committee. Do we have any proposed wording for that? It's not in the packet. No, there is no proposed wording for that. That's why it's not in the packet. All right, sorry, dismiss those. All right, Peter.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to mention too, I wanted to pass over the potential additional motion tonight to create a fire search committee at this time until we do come up with some verbiage. I did realize that after I'd spoken to Joanne last week, so just wanted to mention that to you.
All right, do we have a motion to accept?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to accept the fire study report as presented.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none by roll call.
Carlson, aye.
Fazio, aye.
Frisbee, aye.
Thomas, aye. All right, has passed. Thank you all again for coming and for all your hard work on this. And we will, it's a great document, and we will definitely put it to use. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, let's see if we can. All right, next on the agenda, we have a resignation of Debbie Chenard from the Board of Health.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move the board vote to accept the resignation of Debbie Chenard from the Grafton Board of Health effective June 9, 2020, and send her a letter of thanks for her years of service to the town.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Madam Chair? I
Yes?
think everyone would agree, when Debbie came on board to the public health, I think it was back in 2008, her years of service and dedication to Grafton and public health, and plus her skills as a medical practitioner, nurse, I think has been invaluable. I really just want to extend my verbal thanks to her and her dedication to Grafton and all of the years of service she served on the Board of Health. That's not always an easy position to be on. But I know that Debbie's always had the best interests of Grafton at heart for her with her decisions, and I want to wish her Godspeed in her future endeavors. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're still in discussion. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor by roll call?
Carlson, aye.
Fazio, aye.
Thomas, aye. Thank you, Debbie, for all your years of service. Motion is carried. Appointments, Select Board, Community Preservation Committee. Brooke. So, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may ask the board, would it be possible to delay this action tonight to the next meeting in light of some correspondence that we received with somebody also wanting to join and add and come on the committee? I'm just not sure whether or not, any credence to, how things were published, when things were closed, and so on and so forth. But I would just ask the committee if it'd be willing to just wait another week and maybe have the other interested person, I believe Mr. Whitney and Mr. Paget both in next week, and that way we can interview both of them.
Donna?
Yes, we had this situation earlier this year when we had an appointment to the Disabilities Commission. There was a single candidate and somebody else submitted their application, but it wasn't done by the deadline, and we went ahead and appointed that one person. So given that, I'd like to move the board vote to appoint Brooke Paget to the Community Preservation Committee as an at-large member for a 3-year term expiring on June 30th, 2023.
Madam Chair.
Do I have a
Point of order.
second?
Madam Chair, I had a question to the board, and I know Ms. Stock gave the motion, but I wanted to know if any other members would echo the same sentiment that I may have and just the same request. Just
We
give
can
that
talk about it
for the
under
motion.
discussion.
Well, no, ma'am, I had a question to the board in general before the motion was made, and Donna went right to a motion. So I do ask that you at least open that discussion item up prior to the motion, and if anyone else wanted to see if we want to table this to next week.
Doreen,
Yes, as we all have received all the documents, the emails from Richard Whitney. And so I will say that even taking that into consideration, I am still going to make the same motion. So I am not in agreement to hold off, and I will second Donna's motion.
Ed?
Yeah, let me be really blunt here, and perhaps more blunt in a little bit, but look, the CPC is a tight-knit group of people that is starting to resemble something of a clique. You guys are all friends, and it's fine, but when it starts to appear, and don't look at me like that, I mean, come on. When it starts to appear like there is an opening and it goes to your buddy right away, it's not the best look for the town. And I know how these things go. There's an opening, it's posted on a portion of our website that nobody ever checks. And then all of a sudden it's filled by somebody that you want to have with you on the committee. In fairness, Brooke has been more than involved. He's our liaison to the library building committee, even though he's not on the library, he's not on the board of selectmen anymore. He's on the sewer commission or something. He was just here last year for something else. There's an opportunity here to give somebody else who is interested, or more than one person who might be interested in even hearing our discussion, to sign up and give their perspective on how Community Preservation Act money should be spent. So, in fairness to the entire community, for people who don't always get to be involved, there are only so many spots. Let's put it over till the next meeting, see who else shows up or has an application, and then discuss which applicant we might like. Maybe it's Brooke, maybe it's not, but I think it's the fair thing to do.
Donna.
In fairness to the community, we have made a series of appointments throughout this entire time that I've been on this committee, and we go with the applications that are submitted in the time required, and we make a motion. So there have been several other appointments. We had one several weeks ago. There were 3 candidates and one dropped off, so there were just 2 appointments. There may have been somebody that may have been interested in going for that position. I don't know all of the representatives on CPC, to tell you the truth, so I don't know what you were alluding to earlier, but this application has been fulfilled the way that all of our other appointments have been made, and I'm sorry, I think we should go ahead with the vote.
What's this deadline that we're referring to? I asked John Stevens by email how this position was advertised. He never got back to me. Does anybody know?
Madam Chair, Tim McInerney, I can share 2 things. There's a policy of the board, and I'll share that with you relative to filling vacancies on town committees. This was adopted in March 2016. Committees will be open until filled. Committees will be 14 days, posted on the town's webpage. More on that in a second. This dealt with new committees once a quorum was established, because we had a problem back in 15 relative to the membership of certain places. On a quarterly basis, the town will run vacancy ad announcements in the Grafton News. Vacancies will be updated on the town website, town bulletins board, and GCTV until full membership is established. So that was an administrative policy that the board adopted to show the advertisement for this. You had it in 2 publications of the Grafton News as consistent with the policy, May 7th and May 14th. not sure why they do the dates there in that order, but they do. It's cut off, unfortunately, but you can see that Community Preservation Committee is there acknowledging that opening. So consistent with the policy, we published it both in the paper and on the website. And some of the letter we got, there's a member that serves on our committee that knew of the vacancy. So it seems odd to me that there would be any question of not knowing that there was a vacancy.
I move the question.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Yes, Ed.
Yeah, so it seems like we have a lot of policies that we need to talk about tonight because I've been on this board for 2 years. That's the first time I've ever heard about that policy. I'm not sure what it means to hold a position open for 14 days. We have any number of vacancies on those committees that go much, much longer than 14 days. So I think at some point, you know, if we're talking about policies eventually later, we might want to talk about how we're advertising these vacancies, because let's be honest, when's the last time you picked up a print edition of the Grafton News and flipped through it for committee vacancies? When we want to put something out, we put it out on the internet on the front of our page, and then we put it out on Facebook. And given the fact that there is a multi-million-dollar super park being proposed by CPC this year, it would seem to me that they would advertise this position with the same amount of enthusiasm that they've advertised that particular project. And that hasn't happened. And now here comes a guy who everybody knows who's going to now sit on that position. So there's my point on that. With regard to this particular applicant, I'm a no. I'm sorry, but I still have the same concerns that I had a couple years ago. We know that Brooks sat on the Townhouse Oversight Committee when he was on this board. We know that in June of 2017, he did not recuse himself from a meeting in which there was a discussion about the contract going to his brother. We know that he wrote a check for an application filing fee while he was sitting on the board. And I see the hands coming up. I'm going to get through this. I will absolutely not be silenced on this.
This is not appropriate.
It is absolutely appropriate, because now we're talking about somebody who's going to be on a committee determining the allocation of potentially millions of dollars.
Your claims are unsubstantiated.
They are not unsubstantiated. These are all facts.
They are unsubstantiated.
These are all facts, and Brooke can respond to them if he wants, but these are all facts. He was
Madam
on the
Chair,
board.
I move the question, please.
No, absolutely not. Why don't you check your own policies about interrupting people when they're talking, Donna, okay? You might not like what I have to say, but I'm going to say it all the same. Brooke was on this board. He did not recuse himself during a discussion when a contract went to his brother. While he was on this board, he wrote a check for an application fee to further the Townhouse Tavern. No. And then after his term of office ended within 6 months,
this
became
is
a
not
signatory. I'm sorry.
Appropriate place to.
I'm sorry it is. These are all facts. Now,
Listen, Mr. Prisby, if you have these issues, and as you've said many, many times, call the ethics. You've never called ethics.
I
There's
actually
never
have.
been
I filed a
anything.
complaint with ethics,
Well,
but
if you
okay.
filed a complaint, nothing came of it.
Well, it's still open.
The things
That's why
that you are
nothing's-
saying are totally out of context, and I would agree with the rest of you. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
Now, as you guys have previously noted, when you were talking about me on another committee, you want to be able to appoint somebody to these committees who represents well to the town of Grafton. If I have concerns about you and your inability to distinguish between what is personal and what is public, then I'm not going to vote for you. And I want to ask you these
That's
questions.
fine, then don't vote. It's irrelevant to me whether you're, listen, I never knew this committee would be so controversial. It's the CPC. My guess is if Mr. Whitney's name was here and I put my name in today, Mr. Prisby and all your, for the goodness of the town, would probably be arguing the opposite. So I kind of take your whole process argument to be a little fake.
Well, if you're saying that I'm biased against you because I have concerns about your ability, then I am.
Right. It's about my ability to be on the CPC on whether I can handle it. I'm going to ask this.
Yeah.
I put my name in.
Well, we're going to vote.
Informed of the opening. Vote me in or vote me out. And Mr. Prisby, if you have issues with anything that's happened in the past, file a complaint. You say it a lot, but you're talking about things that aren't true. So if it's true,
what part of what I said wasn't
Ed,
true.
we are gonna, listen, we're voting.
What part of what I said wasn't true?
We're not doing this here. There is a motion and a second.
Okay. So I think it's pretty clear that this is how this goes in
Ed,
this town.
enough. Ed,
I'm-
enough.
I recorded stock eye.
There hasn't been a call to vote yet, Ms. Stock. Madam Chair, if I may, I would like just a few minutes, please. The only reason why, again, I stated what I said earlier is just the confusion that I received after hearing Mr. McInerney's response to, how the thing was, how the position was advertised. I do get that, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty in tune with what's advertised and what's not lately. And I'll be honest with you, I had no idea that that position was even advertised. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to change anyone's mind tonight, but I do think that there's some credence to that if we're publishing positions equally and effectively throughout all of Grafton, then I would want to revisit that policy to assure that each one of the positions that are being advertised are done so in a way that's equitable amongst all of them. Okay. And again, the only reason why I brought up my point earlier was just the confusion when I see an email from a resident of Grafton. Okay. I'm just bringing that to the board's decision about waiting a week. And if you and everyone else wants to vote on this tonight and it's not going to change your mind, I get that. I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's going to change your mind next week either. That's all I was bringing up earlier. Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call.
Stock eye.
Fazio, aye.
Frisbee, no.
Carlson, no.
Thomas, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Have a good night, Brooke.
I just want to clarify that the board positions that are open are on the town website. Anybody can go there. There doesn't have to be an opening for you to apply. You can send in your application. They keep them on file for a year. So you can apply before there's an official opening. So, if you're interested in a specific committee that doesn't have an opening, you can still send in an application. All right, election workers.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I move the board vote to appoint the following individuals as election workers: Michaela Federico, Lori Lee Seinfert, Sarah Ketchaputi, Elizabeth Haynes, Sneera Grabu, Molly Zurillo, Kaylin Foley, Elizabeth Torrenson, Kevin Brown Jr.
Second.
a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call.
Stock eye.
Fazio, aye.
Frisbee, aye.
Thomas, aye. Motion carried. Sorry. Vote to sign contract with Immediate Incorporated for town meeting setup. Tim?
No, let me see. I didn't unmute myself here. I did. So part of the logistics for planning town meeting dealt with Media. Coincidentally, they were the same group that the school department's going to potentially contract with. They have a proposal from them for the high school graduation in July. So I felt like I was in good company. They were on the state bid list as a provider for this type of service. So they handle logistics relative to AV needs for the meeting, broadcasting to the gym, which will be an endeavor, and they will do that under this proposal. Obviously, chairs, stage, tents. There's a proposal for 2 screens, which we're waiting on in terms of the viewing angle. They are $5,000 a piece. If there are presentations to be made in the field, they'll be broadcast onto that screen and into the gym, which is all covered in this particular proposal. We don't know if we're going to take possession of those because the sunlight at 9 o'clock in the morning is directly into that screen, so it may not be viewable, so therefore we would not use it. So I'm trying to go look at a screen during daylight hours so I can see, but since everything is not everything is closed, there's no way for me to really see that. So I'm going to still try to work on that and make that decision. But the two of them are 10,000 and 5,000 apiece. The total amount for all of this is 21,000. We will put this in our application for the CARES Act. Anything that wasn't budgeted would be potential reimbursement for the CARES Act if it was due to COVID. And of course, we're trying to keep people safe, and that's why we're moving outside relative to this this event. The rain date, a lot of questions came up when this proposal came in. If we have to have it the following Sunday, they wouldn't charge me any extra. I received that in an email from the salesperson today. So that's good that we have the Sunday availability if it were to rain. So those are the main highlights. Yeah, you can see all of the, well, actually, I'm going to guess, Becca, this was in the packet. We have an FM modulator that will it'll allow people that if they chose to sit in their car, they could tune into an FM station to listen to it and then go to the gym or go to the field to vote. So there's a lot of logistics that are tying back into this whole sound system setup. And we need to make sure that we can broadcast from the field back into the gym, and then from the gym into the auditorium, which is the only fiber cable out to get to the cable audience in the community. So that was a huge goal for Ray that we wanted to meet. So we think we meet all those criteria with this proposal.
Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move the board vote to allow the chair to sign the contract with the Media Incorporation in the amount of $21,027 for the sound and staging setup for the June 20th, rain date, June 21st town meeting.
Second.
Can we just amend that motion just because it's up to, because Tim just said that there may be a screen reduced out of this estimate. So this is the top end, but it may go down. So
Chair, I'll amend my motion to record that I move the board vote to allow the chair to sign the contract with the Media Incorporated up to the amount of $21,027 for the sound and staging setup for the June 20th, rain date, June 21st town meeting.
is the second still?
Second.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for making that amendment. Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor by roll call?
Carlson, aye.
Ozzy, aye.
Frisbee, aye.
Thomas, aye. Although I still wish we could split it with the school, but I lost that one, so. We'll move on. Silver Lake signage enforcement.
So originally I wanted to put this on because the chief and I were going back and forth relative to enforcement of people swimming when there isn't a lifeguard on duty. So the area around the beach is, passive recreation, hiking. People can launch canoes there and paddle boards. So we couldn't really get a good balance between discerning trespass versus people that just kind of swim at their own risk. So we were going to devise some language that would give some fining ability and or enforcement authority, but it would have to be voted by the board. But when we learned that there are other things other than swimming there, we didn't want to keep people from doing that, enjoying those amenities that aren't a risk to themselves or others for social distancing requirements. So we'll take measures to either use snow fence around the beach area close to the water to keep people out. We'll certainly sign the beach area facing the water that no lifeguards are on duty and there is no swimming. Of course, there's no enforcement of that because it'll be difficult. But we want to protect ourselves from a liability standpoint and just be very upfront with folks that it is not safe to swim alone, but the area around there and the trails and canoe launching and paddle boating, all that stuff can still happen on the site. So at the end of the day, this item just should be passed over, but I wanted to at least give you a rationale of why we were considering it.
Peter?
Thank you. Tim, do we have bylaws in Grafton that say that we have to have a lifeguard there for the public to go swimming? And if so, can we make those known to people?
No, there is not a bylaw that requires a lifeguard.
Okay, my next question is, what mechanism then can you forbid people from swimming in a public body of water because of no lifeguard? I just want to make sure we've got our ducks in a row if we're going to put signages up and do all these steps.
Ask me that again. I'm not sure I understand you.
Okay, what mechanism does the town have to forbid people from swimming in a public body of water if there is no bylaw that enforces that the town can take such an action? I just want to know what's our mechanism that allows us to tell the public to not go swimming.
There really is no enforcement mechanism other than a no trespass, which would be difficult to discern for a police officer to determine whether they were trespassing into the water or just sitting on the beach. So that's where our problem rests.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may, this is something I just want to have cleared up. I've received, and again, numerous, concerns from the public about the use of public waterways, and that, what authority do we have as a town to tell people whether they can trespass or not trespass on a public waterway? I get that if we had the bylaws or we had some sort of regulation, I just want to know what that is. So if I do tell people saying, hey, the town closed it, you can't go swimming, or do I say, no, the town closed it and you shouldn't go swimming, but you do so at your own risk because there's no lifeguard? I just want to make sure that I'm giving good sound advice that I can back up. Does that make sense?
It does, but I don't know whether I can root that in law for you, because the chief can't differentiate between the beach and the water in terms of no trespass. At least that's what he tells me. And that's why I don't have a signage vote for you today. I would tell people that it's unsafe to swim without a lifeguard. Don't swim. Can that be enforced? Why answer that?
Ed?
I think you're about to answer my question, which I guess is the next step. Is it's going to be a long summer. It's going to be hot. We know people are going to show up there. What's the policy? What I'm hearing now is it's going to be really difficult. And I thought of this immediately when I saw Rex's announcement. You can kayak, you can hike, you can sit on the beach. There's a fine line between doing all those things and actually getting in the water and going swimming, which you can't do. What level of effort are we going to give here to make sure that people aren't doing that which we say they can't do? Because if you drive down the street and a police officer sees 50 people in the water, and we know that it's not necessarily safe for them to be there just hanging out swimming without lifeguards, because it is dark water. What are we going to do?
The police will just use, community policing tactics to say, please vacate. But at the end of the day, bringing the poison to the top of the pond, if they don't leave, there's no authority the police department can enforce.
So no one's going to be arrested?
No.
Okay.
They'll be asked to leave, but if they choose not to and they protest, then we're relying on the good charm of the police officers to motivate people to move along.
Okay, any other questions? Let's go to select board reports. Any member of the select board wish to share a report? No? I will just reiterate what I said in the announcements. CPC is having a series of forums. You can go to the website and see when they are. And for people to participate in, the Affordable Housing Trust is meeting tomorrow night if people are interested in attending that meeting. TA report.
Jen?
Sorry, Donna.
Disabilities Commission met last week. We had Jen come in from Recreation and talk about the report that we have that we're using to make some recommendations going forward. So the minutes will be passed along for everybody to read.
Thank you. Any further select board reports? Doreen.
Yeah, I want to bring up one thing, which is the town meeting logistics that have been going on. So, I was brought on as the board member to kind of oversee that project, and Tim and myself and Ray and Dave Robbins, who will be the deputy moderator for the meeting, and the CERT coordinator and Candy and a whole bunch of us were out on the field yesterday afternoon. And there's been meetings going on, and I just wanted to say, like, a lot of work behind the scenes to making this town meeting as safe to the public as possible. And I happen to be a person who has taken COVID very seriously because I'm around my elderly parents quite a bit, and they're dependent on me. And so as someone who has been very conservative, I am impressed of all the efforts that's being made toward making this town meeting as safe as possible for people. So I just wanted to say that and kind of commend the people who have been involved. There's still work to be done in the coming weeks, but Tim and Ray in particular have led this with a lot of caution and a lot of creative ideas to make sure that the public is safe. So just wanted to mention that.
All right. Peter.
I just want to say thank you, Doreen, for doing that on our behalf and looking out and overseeing that. I know that that's all new territory, and I just want to appreciate the time you took out of your day to go down and have those meetings, and just want to thank you and the rest of the group, Ray, Candy, Tim, and Becca, Jay, and the rest of the school staff for their assistance, especially Bob Batoma. Thank you.
Okay, TA report.
All right, I'll try and be brief. I know you got a lot of stuff, but I just wanted to let the board know that the culvert on Westboro Road has been in failure for quite some time, and we were looking at Chapter 90 and other funding sources. We did apply for a grant. It's an SNEP watershed grant. The request was made for $466,000. The total project cost to replace that culvert, if you go by the Grafton Upton Railroad, you'll go by, after you go over the railroad tracks, you'll see the culvert. It's been in failure for quite some time. A lot of water eroding the sides of it and so forth. But anyways, it's an $851,000 project. So to get $466 in the grant application and potentially get that done, it's always been slated, but we needed a couple things. We needed conservation, and we needed the landowner for the Grafton Upton Railroad to allow us to have access to the other side of the culvert, so we wouldn't have to work from above, which would have driven the cost up quite a bit. So the application is in. We'll know in July if we get those funds, and we'll move forward with that project as we go. Just a couple quick things relative to Adams Road and that easement that we've talked about. We did a taking a town meeting for the water to be pushed back down number 38 and a pipe underground. We're still working on that. We do have an order of taking for the board to execute at some point in the future in the event that we cannot work out an amicable deal with the landowner. There's no house on the particular parcel. We do anticipate putting the pipe on the furthest right-hand side of the land, which will not impact building that house. So we have a call scheduled for Friday with the engineering firm, ours and theirs, to make sure we can see if we can get that squared away without asking the board to do an order of taking. The estimate for that was, I think, $9,500 in terms of the loss, which the money we used for that road was a combination of Chapter 90 and road stabilization. So we are eligible to be able to pay that taking with those funds, which we would do. And we had one of the best appraisers in the state do the work, Joel Boothray. So he's very good if we were to be sued to prevail in that case for the value. So more on that. Hopefully we can work it out logistically and don't have to do the order of taking, but I just want to make the board aware of it because we do want to start that project in July, and that is coming up soon. Doreen mentioned town meeting logistics. We're doing a lot of things around that, from the TV program that Becca and I usually do, just to provide information and insight, and then encourage people to call us with questions or concerns about town meeting or the articles that we're proposing. We are working on a mailer. I think Jen mentioned that at the beginning of the meeting. So that's just probably a 1 or 2 pager. We'll get it to every door. It'll be, dear Grafton voter, town meeting's going to happen. Here are some of the logistics. Here's what you need to know. Parking, social distancing, trying to keep people safe, check in. So some of the logistics pieces. And then obviously guiding them back to the website for more information and to Facebook and to whatever mediums they might use for information. So the reason is, you get to town meeting, you got to make decisions. If we can not sit in the sun for 6 hours, it'd be great. So we're trying to get a smooth transition, get good information to people so they can make good decisions when we get to town meeting. So that's the goal with that. The documents that we used to have at the police department, we're going to bring them back up to the building here. So if you have access, obviously you have keys to the building and to the office. No documents are at the PD any longer. They'll be in the selectman's office. And then finally, the biggest piece of news I have, we have a memo that came from Chris McGoldrick, who's our planner. I asked him to pen this. And this guy this is one of the reasons why I hired him, because his writing ability was so good and precise without a lot of windiness. So I'm going to share this one part of this memo that you all have in the morning. So this is relative to 8 Pine Street. So we had a proposal just to take you through this, and this is what he did so well, or does so well. 8 Pine, we took ownership back in August, and then we went out and created a RFP in December. We had an original date for March 18th. COVID came up. We pushed it back to April 2. We had 4 proposals. One of the proposals was deemed incomplete, so we rejected it. So we had 3. Those 3 proposals were reviewed by myself, Dan Crossan, Chris, Becca, and I'm sure there was one other person, but I can't recall the name. But we did this an evaluation based on the criteria we set out in the RFP to get this land turned around. So this is the big picture, if you will. These are the companies that bid: GSX, NOAA, and then Wood. So the number of units, these are the highlights, obviously: 306, 177, 222. They're all rentals, so they're all go to the index for SHI, which is this line here that we asked Chris to kind of look at and analyze in terms of the estimated to the impact for affordable housing. So there are things in the queue for affordable housing from private developers that aren't, built. They're just in the queue. So this number is subject to change, but if everything in the queue would not be built and these were built, then this number would be it. Those things do get built, this number gets higher. We had a retail commercial component in all requests. NOAA had 1,500 square feet. GSX had 1,134, and Wood had none. The price offering was $1,725,000 for GSX, $2 million for NOAA, certainly a higher price, and then 1.2 for Wood. The estimated value based on their performance of what they thought the yield would be from taxes, GSX, their total investment was about 75 million, give or take. So the yield for that, on average, estimated is 922. And then NOAA, it's low of 200,000 because they had a phased approach and they were going to reuse a lot of buildings. And so the renovation cost and time was significant. So that actually played against them in the overall scheme of things against other proposals. The GSX proposal didn't rely on any tax credits or any other financing. The NOAA one did involve some financial assistance from the Affordable Housing Trust, like around 900,000. So that was tough to kind of swallow and digest. And the Wood proposal, they were looking at some significant TIF financing requirements, which would have meant the value of the land would be what it is. They would pay tax on that, but any incremental value, they would be able to enjoy those tax savings. And I think they were looking for a 15-year TIF on those dollars. So all of those things combined, when we went through this analysis and had these meetings, and then we had interviews, we actually brought NOAA in and GSX, and they did a presentation. We were able to ask questions about particular pieces. Both had very good qualities, But at the end of the day, our recommendation to you to enter into a purchase and sales agreement is with GSX. And we hope to have them in next Tuesday, just to have the board be introduced to them, talk to them. We can share this particular presentation now that we're making the recommendation for them. But we looked at the priority goals as well. So that's what this all lists out. The interesting component here is the MBTA station and the whole study for the transit-oriented development is surrounded around the MBTA station. So their proposal provides some accommodation for parking, additional parking for the, it says Metro, obviously they must have had a DC component here, but for the MBTA station. So that was an interesting piece. The 11,000 square feet for commercial was a great feature for us in terms of a restaurant amenity and other shop experiences. Again, it's not just one piece of Route 30 in that corridor being developed. It's everything from this to the UPS to Alfonso's property to MJ's Market and Resonate, all those things going together to make a village inside of North Grafton, in essence, is what we're looking to do. So, you have a couple warrant articles that deal with the transfer of this property. We voted to get it. Now we're voting to allow us to release it. There is a longer due diligence with GSX. So that'll be the thing that we can certainly dive into when they're before us next week. But you'll have this memo, tomorrow morning, so you can read it in its entirety, and then we can upload. It's a huge file from GSX. We can upload those as well, so people can look at their entire piece. But it's a significant boost to the SHI. It is a lot of units on 8 acres of land, but we changed the zoning to accommodate for that, and that's what all the studies we've done up until this point showed us was what we needed was a mix of workforce housing. These will be 1 and 2 bedrooms, some studios. So that's the lion's share of the proposal, but just very grateful to everybody who kind of put a shoulder to this and got it underway in a very quick fashion, right? To take this on in August and to get it turned around and maybe get a P&S signed before August, I think is an amazing turnaround. So for a state hospital, we get to, under the agreement we have with the state, we have to share these proceeds for the price, for the offering price. So there's a couple percentage points that we add for certain things of redevelopment capacity. So at a minimum, we'll get 50% of the 1.7 that we can put towards, anything at the end of the day, but maybe more affordable housing, maybe offset some budget problems that we are experiencing for COVID, or what have you. Certainly, we always intended to move some money back into stabilization if we were to use any of it to offset those costs to begin with. So I think that's really good news for us overall, and I think we can apply this strategy for developing this RFP with parameters and get a good showing of support. And this is they're bona fide offers. They had certified checks and they met all the criteria that we set out in the RFP. So that's 8 Pine Street. Now I'll answer any questions you have.
Ed?
Yeah, sorry, I'm playing a little bit of catch up here. The GSX offer, I agree with you, does look more palatable than the other ones. Is this technically a LIP project?
No.
Okay, so what's their next hurdle then? Is it just to get through planning and construction?
There's a lot of old buildings on the site, so you have environmental things that these folks didn't do. They're buying kind of site scene. We did a lot of site works, but there's been no analysis of the lead, asbestos, whatever could be there. They got to do that. So that's the due diligence piece. But yeah, the planning process would be next after that due diligence phase, demo, and then construction.
And the town planner is on board and is confident that this is going to get through planning in fairly, I don't want to say short order because it's never really short order, but painlessly.
Well, I mean, the town planners, our employee, my employee, and the planning board separately elected will, will attend every meeting, will advocate for this to go through. They supported the zone change when we made these adjustments because that was just a residential R40 district. So we made it this village mixed use district that is really driving what we can do on the site. So I won't speak for them because they're elected, but I would imagine we spent a lot of money doing studies to get this to be what we have before us, and I would hope that they would support it.
Yeah, it looks promising. Thank you.
Then one final note. Nope, actually, I don't want to be redundant, so that's all I have. Thank you.
Tim, we do have a question about the Historic Commission. Did they look at these proposals and did they recommend?
Yeah, there was a requirement under the state guidelines when we did the purchase, and it had the state historical and the local historical, and they did a lot of analysis. There's more insight to be had with the state than the local. I think the local group, they were, on its face, GSX was the one, but NOAA did a lot more due diligence in terms of rehabbing those buildings. But the timeline and even the density and the investment all weighed heavily against it. So yeah, I think they as a group were in favor of NOAA. The state didn't have a favor. They got to just opine on the different proposals, but they did acknowledge that a lot of what NOAA was proposing presupposed a lot of approvals from the state of Massachusetts, which they weren't so sure that they would get, but not in a timely fashion. So long answer, yes, they did have input, yes.
Okay. I can't quite, can you stop screen sharing so we can go back?
Happy to.
If we're done, thank you. Okay. Are you finished with your TA report?
I am. Is the board, can I just ask, are you guys okay with me having GSX in at the next meeting to entertain their proposal and maybe entertain a PNS?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I think I'd kind of like to see a sketch about what their plan is first before I sign off on that. I'm okay with that. I just want to have more information if that can be provided in advance.
Yeah, their proposals were detailed in terms of drawings. They're conceptual, they're not engineered. So if you don't get the exact portico roof with the dining apparatus on the top, don't be upset with me. But that's the concept. But those will be, if we can upload that file tonight for GSX proposal, you'll be able to see it online.
Could you send it to me?
Ed.
Yeah, similar with Peter, I'd like to see it. I guess I'd like to have them in. We get a little bit excited sometimes about these potential developments and the potential revenue from them. If there's no environmental, I'm still cautiously optimistic, but I would like to have them come in.
Good.
Okay. We have a couple more questions from Justin Wood. One additional question: with 77 affordable units out of 306 units, does that meet the percentage requirement to have the whole development considered as part of our affordable housing inventory? I can answer that, yes. We requested 25%. So because they are apartments, all units will count towards the inventory. All right, Dan is here. I apologize, Dan. Can we, he is here for discussion D, CPA funded rental assistance. Can we skip to that now so Dan can go to bed?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ed, you asked for this to be on, so I'm not sure exactly what you wanted to talk about.
I want to talk about CPA funded rental assistance. So before we get to that, and then in keeping with what we were just talking about, I just want to run through some numbers. Here in Grafton, we are looking at, we have 7,160 year-round housing units. Now, if we were to bring online everything we were just talking about in Pine Street, we would still actually be a little bit short in getting out from under Chapter 40B. According to Grafton's housing production plan, which you two are no doubt familiar with being on the trust, the last iteration has us around 365 subsidized housing inventory units. I'm not sure if that's varied in 2 years, but if it has, it hasn't varied by very much. Karen Sonnenberg, who wrote the plan, said that we'll likely need another 400 units to get to the 10% affordability goal after the 2020 census figures are released, as we definitely know are coming. Here in Grafton, despite our increasing wealth, according to our housing production plan, there still remains a significant population living in Grafton with a very limited means. There were 893 households with incomes of less than $25,000, and an additional 387 households earning between $25,000 and $35,000, based on the 2016 census estimates, which are obviously the most recent ones that we have. About 30% of Grafton's total households, or approximately 2,000 households, would likely qualify for housing assistance, as their incomes were at or below 80% of the area median income as defined by the U.S. Department of Housing. While poverty levels in Grafton are low, approximately 5.6% of our total residents, meaning families and children, are living in poverty. 30% of all Grafton households are living in housing that was, by common definition, beyond their means or unaffordable. 62% of those earning at or below 80% median family income were spending too much for housing, including 1/3 who were spending more than half of their income on housing, up from 1/4 a few years ago. While 544 rental units have been added to the housing stock since 1980, the percentage of rental units has declined from 30.6% in 1980 to 25% in 2010, which ticked back up to 27.7% in 2016, which would obviously be helped by Pine Street, but not nearly enough. An estimated 893 households, or 13.2%, had incomes less than $25,000. I said that. I'm scanning these statistics because I want to underline the fact that while Grafton's overall median income and wealth is increasing, there is nevertheless a constant need for housing in Grafton, and more particularly affordable housing. Given the present crisis, there is a need more than ever, with approximately 1/3 of our residents in, I would say, at or near crisis level in their income and in their housing. There is a need now to address rental income assistance. Cities around the Commonwealth have done this already. For instance, the city of Chelsea made an enormous move by dedicating $1.25 million of CPC money to their Affordable Housing Trust and their Housing Commission to provide for rental assistance. Other communities are following suit. Now, we kind of missed the boat here, because in order for us to move CPC money to the Affordable Housing Trust, we would have needed a warrant article. We didn't do that. So now my question is, given the statistical need and the known need in the town of Grafton for rental assistance during this pandemic, what can we do to make sure that the Affordable Housing Trust can provide rental assistance to people as soon as possible, and make sure that that money comes, at least in part, from the CPC? And I say this because even if Pine Street happens, and I really hope that it does, but as we've seen over the past few years, best laid plans sometimes go to waste. We need an additional 400 units to get out from under Chapter 40B, and I would argue there is a moral imperative for even more than that. The Affordable Housing Trust, when I was escorted off of it in 2014, had about $425,000 in the bank. And then there was, of course, the $900,000 we got from the Pulte Homes settlement. I'm sure some of it is spent since on consultants. So let's say it's got about $1.2 million. With 400 units left to make up to get up from under Chapter 40B. That would be about $3,000 worth of purchasing power for each unit. Obviously, the Affordable Housing Trust is not flush with cash, given the enormous task in front of it to be able to create affordable housing, which it hasn't been able to do in the 13-year history of the trust. My concern is that, number one, this is something that we need to jump on sooner rather than later. There have been at least a few rental cycles gone through now where people could have used the money in urgent circumstances, and it's not getting any better as time goes on. But number two, I don't want to see the trust entirely spend down what they've got in their accounts, because that money really does need to go to the creation of affordable housing in Grafton, because we have a demonstrated need. So what can we get done in the very near future to make sure that the Affordable Housing Trust can provide some form of rental assistance to Grafton residents? And how can we make sure that the CPC is reimbursing at least, I would say 75% to 100% of that cost? That's my question. That's why I put this on the agenda.
Dan, do you want to go first, or you want me to go first? Dan, go ahead.
Yeah,
There's so much wrong there.
Sure.
No,
that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and thank you. Yeah, you a lot of your data comes right out of the housing production plans, pretty much spot on. I have a few of those things here as well. And that is the first place we should be going to kind of get our arms around what the potential need is for rental assistance. Given the data is still a few years old, it's the closest thing we have. So sadly, we are kind of still in the early stages of like wrapping our arms around this. I don't think it's something the town's ever done before. Trust hasn't done it. CPA hasn't done it, to my knowledge. So what's been going on? So back in April, myself, other trust members, and members of the CPA attended a Zoom meeting that was hosted by CHAPA and Mass Housing Partnership. And essentially, it was just, it was a great meeting. They talked a lot about, sort of governance, best practices, what to do, provided some resources and things like that. The four big takeaways from this are, one, you have to establish need. And I think you articulated that well, Ed. I think there's probably more we could dig into there, because there's, of the rental units we have, there's probably some folks that are already getting rental assistance. If you're getting some form of rental assistance, usually don't have to use your CPA money for that. So that's one thing we need to explore a little bit more. That's an action item for us. And this is, by the way, going to be an agenda item for us at our Affordable Housing Trust meeting tomorrow. Tomorrow evening. So, defining need, getting into the tranches of what our rental disposition looks like. That's really important. I think the next thing too is, before we even, we have CPA money, and certainly the trust has some, but let's make sure that we're overturning every stone, and we're finding all other resources that are available. If there's state or federal aid that's out there that could be used first. Our CPA money is really important to us for all the things that we want to be able to use locally. So I think that's something that has to be part of the process as well, instead of just immediately relying on CPA money and saying, well, we're going to go to the Affordable Housing Trust, in either or. So that's one big facet I think we need to look at as well, very quickly and very closely and very quickly. Again, you talked about identifying the need. Another major issue here, and we kind of tasked Chris with this, and he started working on it. I believe he's going to be reporting back to us, is, who do you work with? The Affordable Housing Trust is a group of volunteers. We don't have the background to manage the process of evaluating and vetting people who may qualify for assistance. There's a lot of liability if you're, not maintaining, structures within fair housing. That kind of thing comes to mind for me. So you want to have an organization that you can partner with that's done this before, knows what they're doing, hits the ground running. You have transparency, efficiency, and fairness in the process. That's the next step, I think, to really get this off the ground. In terms of identifying need, I think, Ed, you talked a lot about that. We really can't say we know exactly how many people are going to be calling and saying we need a rental assistance. I'm assuming there's going to be people. We know that there's a moratorium on evictions, and we know there's some folks that are getting more through the CARES Act. They may be getting additional unemployment. So it just hasn't hit yet, but it may in the coming months. I think we're going to start hearing from people. The main thing is once you put put something out on the website that says we have rental assistance, you have to be prepared to respond to that. It's like ringing a dinner bell, and everybody's going to say, "I need rental assistance." So it has to be-
let's not use the dinner bell comparison because people are legit going hungry.
Can you let Dan finish, please?
I understand, Jen. We're having a conversation. I know Dan. I respect Dan.
We're in a meeting. You need to address him. He is talking.
Go on, Dan.
That's basically where we're at. That's where this conversation started in late April. The trust has met. Some of my members know about it, not all of them. So we have to really break it down tomorrow. We have to really, identify that partnership and do a little bit more digging and set some targeted goals to say, when can we be live with this?
Right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. There are a couple different things. In an emergency like this, I appreciate that everybody wants to dot every I, cross every T, uncover every funding source that you possibly can. I think that's legitimate. But at the same time, I would encourage you that ought to be a parallel track to work on, and that how resources like CHAPA and the MHP can direct you to contractors who can run these types of operations for you. Chelsea didn't do it themselves. Chelsea actually hired a contractor to come in and run the operation for them. CPA does have money, it can spend up to 5% to staff and accommodate these things. I'd be curious about whether or not that expense can be used to cover the cost of a contractor who could distribute funds to people who are in need. We're only going to find out who's in need by putting it out there that there is a program, and then that program can be vetted by the contractor. The only thing that the affordable housing has to do is just sort of be that control, setting the policy, sending an application to the CPC for this funds, and the CPC has to sign off and says, yes, this is something that we intend to reimburse you on. I see Jen shaking her head. I'm sure she can chime in and tell me what I got wrong. But so far, what I'm hearing is that there is a desire to do this program, and there are people that are in need.
Yeah, and I would just agree and just say to you, the idea of being on a parallel track, absolutely. There's a lot of the details, there's a lot of the due diligence and those sort of things, and sort of making sure we use all the resources available. But that's why the first when we came through this program, we went through the Zoom meetings, we saw these things, talked to Chris. First action item was we got to get a partner so we can get this done. So we did kind of take that parallel approach to say, okay, we just can't go step one, step two, step three. It's like we've got to find that person. And I would agree with you. You put it out there, and then you're going to find out. People aren't calling because they don't know that it's available. So if it's not there, they're not going to call. You're not going to know. It's tough to budget for. That's the thing. We can kind of estimate based on the statistics that we have. But that's a challenging part, and I think to echo your concern, that's where there has to be this partnership with the Affordable Housing Trust and CPA to say, look, we can't know exactly what this is going to be. We may be spending more money than we need, and there is that concern about, hey, the Affordable Housing Trust does have CPA money. I'm looking at this and saying there's a lot of people who are in affordable housing who are going to be impacted by what's happened. The mission of the Affordable Housing Trust is to grow, build, and develop affordable housing. But we're trying to maintain people in their homes. That's how I saw the Affordable Housing Trust role here. But I appreciate your concerns, and we're trying to move forward as quickly as we can.
If I can just add to that, just one number here. There are 1,700 rental units in the town of Grafton. If 30% of those were in crisis situations right now, as the data suggests they might be, with just a mild interruption in their income stream, and you were to give them $500 a month in rental assistance, that's $255,000. Now, the Affordable Housing Trust has about 1.3. CPA can certainly kick in with a little more. You'd be looking at, a limited time program, because Chelsea's wasn't open-ended. I don't think anybody's been open-ended. It's always a short-term thing. But if you did some math, even on the back of a napkin, and set this thing at $300,000, and encourage applications and have it be a one-time thing, that even that might help.
Yeah, and Ed, I think that's the numbers that it did the same thing, just some quick calculations, and looked in very similar numbers that you're looking at with the renters in town. And said, I just said, what's the unemployment rate?
Right.
How many people does that mean? I mean, if we assume, 15%, let's make it 20. You say it would be 3 months. I mean, what we're hearing is that most of the communities that have had this in the past, or who have done it, it's a 3-month temporary thing. It's not an open-ended long-term program.
Right.
But that being said, we don't know. We have to be prepared for that. That could, once you put it out there, that could be the reality.
Thank you for your work on this, Dan.
Thanks.
Madam Chair?
Okay. Peter, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you very much. Dan, thanks for sticking around tonight. Hopefully we get done before tomorrow. But real quick, does Affordable Housing Trust still have staffing assistants within the town hall? I know Ann Morgan played an integral role for many, many years, but since her departure, I wasn't quite sure if we have staffing for Affordable Housing Trust anymore. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for me?
Not really. We don't really have dedicated staff. I mean, we had Ann, and then after Ann left, we had Rachel Benson. After Rachel left, Joe did, he ran interference, did a lot of things for us, helped us out. Chris has been great, kind of working through things with me, as and Joanne has as well, kind of helping me get set up on Zoom meetings. But it's not to the extent that we had with Ann Morgan.
Right. And I think to your point, if I may add, about the logistics of managing this temporary program, that it would require some feet on the ground that understood it intimately, because it's not something that I think the trust can do the day-to-day management of that. Is that am I understanding?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Peter. I mean, it's a lot to absorb. What we do on the trust is pretty dense for somebody walking in off the street. They've never heard of this. I mean, I remember walking into my first meetings and I read what I could, and it was a lot, and it's a lot to absorb in a program like this. I mean, you don't want to take a volunteer group and have them evaluating people who need help, and you need the consistency, you need the fairness, you need the transparency, and there are organizations that know how to do this, and they know how to do it well. We vet them, we do a due diligence, and you pick one, you run with it. They'll handle it, and it'll be worth any fee we have to pay them. It'll be money well spent.
All right. So that's what I'm hearing, is that ideally this would be almost like an outsourced services to do all of the logistics and all of the administration work and the accountability.
You got it. You got it. Absolutely.
Okay, understood. And if I may, Madam Chair, just one more question. So I guess moving forward, your meeting is tomorrow, and I understand you may be talking about this. Is there any direction that you can share with us that you think that you personally would like to see happen, just as the chair of Affordable Housing Trust, speaking for yourself?
Yeah, I'd like to set an aggressive, as aggressive a timeline as I can, and we really have to start project planning it out. I think this is one of those situations where you're in your community and you gotta step up where you can. Like, as Ed and I talked about, this isn't directly, part of, if you look at the bullet points on what the Affordable Housing Trust does, this doesn't necessarily fit in, but this is a different time we're in right now. And there's people who could be really at risk of being evicted and losing their properties. And we know the eviction moratorium is out there. I think it's like a 4-month, moratorium, but it's a community rate issue. We are sitting on about $650,000 in CPA money. That's what we have. We have the Pulte funds. We kind of like to save that, but the CPA money we can use.
Yeah.
But again, we're looking at saying, well, we're also seeing these rate developments. Pine Street, yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity. If that happens, that's phenomenal. I mean, that would be great. Without us having to do a whole lot except say, be involved with Tim's office and say, yeah, you're doing the right thing. We feel that you're doing the right thing, and I can go back to the trust and say they're doing a great job there. But there could be other developments down the road where we have to spend money. And I don't, want to, lose this war chest we have and not be able to have it, be able to replenish it. I mean, there could be another developer that's a different situation than Pine Street but is the right fit for that development. That organization, NOAA, they're outstanding. I can't say a bad thing about them. They had a real healthy perspective on affordability. Could they pop up for us again in another development? They could. If they needed money for affordable housing at that time to make that transaction happen, to make that development happen, I would love to be able to help accommodate that. We don't want to keep this money. We're not a bank. We have the money to drive the program forward and build affordable housing and create affordable housing. So my point is, I don't want to drain the coffers, and then when an opportunity arises, we don't have the ability to do it. So this is wholly a partnership with us to the CPA and making sure we can maintain ourselves.
So what I'm hearing is that in the immediate future, you're going to set an aggressive timeline, but then you're going to have to come up with some policy with the direction of the board about what the amount of funds are appropriate to perform this type of assistance. And to your point, it's on a limited basis. This doesn't go in perpetuity, right? Unlike the mission of the Affordable Housing Trust, which is its ongoing mission is to create affordable housing within the community, in that your policy is to potentially set those monies aside just for those purposes only. So it sounds like that's what I'm hearing that you guys are going to be doing, and you think you'll have some traction within the next meeting or two on that?
Yeah, I think we're going to try to get some solid direction. I think once we have a partner to work with, we can, there's a lot of these questions. They're going to know. They're going to have a sense and say, well, what are the statistics on your community? This is what they are. Okay, this is what you should expect. And then, as Ed said, we can wring our hands about this and say, well, I don't know what the budget number should be. But again, I still think we should find alternative sources to protect all of our CPA money for the whole community. But you kind of have to say, well, let's put it out there. Let's just do it. Let's budget the funding. But everybody's got to understand that. This is where the CPA money is going to be going this year. And you just go from there.
So thank you very much. Appreciate all that information.
Thank you, Peter.
Yep.
Right. Ed, can I get something in here? You've been talking the whole time. So I do just want to reiterate the Affordable Housing Trust actually has 1.7 million, 687,000 of it is CPA money. And there is money on the warrant, getting additional money moved from CPA to the Affordable Housing Trust. So the CPA has moved quite a bit of money to the Affordable Housing Trust. Again, to do this type of CPA is a funding source. They do not manage projects, just like they do not manage other projects in town. They're not the ones actually running the show. So it is a perfect partnership with the Affordable Housing Trust, and the town staff is working really hard to get it up and running. You quote, all of your numbers you quoted were all from cities, which I feel like is that's going to be inflated. We are a smaller town. I feel like, and I don't quite understand how you assume that a third of our population is in crisis. I think that we don't really know that until I'm speaking now. So
yeah, I know, but you're asking me a question. I have answers to your question in a minute.
No, you can wait. So we also are applying to the CARES Act. So again, we could get more money for rental assistance. But the biggest point I want to make, and it is late, and this is going on, our meeting has been long, is that there is CPA money to do this. If the Affordable Housing Trust would like to apply for more CPA money in October, they can. But the narrative that you're spreading around that this cannot happen, that other CPA projects and this can't happen simultaneously is incorrect. And I just want to clarify that. There is money to do both rental assistance and fund other CPA projects. Ed.
If I can respond to that, I'll take those in order. The numbers I got didn't come from a city. They came from your own housing production plan that, as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, I would assume you'd be familiar with.
You spoke about Chelsea quite a bit.
Yeah, I talked about Chelsea and what they did with their $1.25 million, which of course, as a city, they would have a little bit more money, but they were also magnanimous. I'm sure that they also had projects that they would want to use their money for CPA funds with. Here we have an opportunity if the CPA can do everything that it wants to do and also do this, what I would be looking for if I were the Affordable Housing Trust is a commitment, not just an application to be funded or not funded in October, but a written understanding between the parties that they're going to work together to set a benchmark goal for funding for rental assistance as soon as humanly possible, and that commitment is going to be honored this coming October. Because whether it's 1.2 or 1.7 million dollars, the average unit in Grafton, the average home in Grafton, the sale price or the median market value is $390,000. The Affordable Housing Trust is not going to create a massive amount of units that we need with 1.2, 1.7, or 2.5. It simply isn't going to happen. So every dollar that they have has to be accounted for and thoroughly planned for, which is why it's so hard to create affordable housing in Grafton, which is why they haven't been able to do it at all yet, because it's simply not enough money to do it in this environment. So they have to be very careful. I would hope that town leaders, understanding the crisis that we're in, would have the foresight to understand that. And if this is something that the CPA can do and manage their other projects as well, I don't see the barrier. Get a commitment from CPC and have the Affordable Housing Trust partner with an organization that can manage the project, that in that management fee should be funded through CPA funds. That's all.
Right, we're already doing all those things, so it's all good.
Okay, but when's the timeline? Like, is there a written commitment from CPC to fund it?
There is not a written, well, the CPC money, the Affordable Housing Trust already has $687,000 of CPA money. If they need more money, they can apply. No, there's no written amount that says we will give you, or that the CPC will fund an X amount, because the number isn't known yet, Ed. It's not known.
Okay.
So, Ed.
I'm just asking this question. Let's see if we can come to some understanding here. There is only so much money that the Affordable Housing Trust has to, as we've already acknowledged, create a lot of units. So do you understand that by providing rental assistance from the funds that they already have from CPA, that diminishes their ability to create further affordable housing by diminishing their resources?
Yes, I do understand that.
So
and I also understand that if there's a project that comes along, the Affordable Housing Trust, the CPC has always said, every single time the Affordable Housing Trust comes to CPC, if you have a project that you would like additional funding besides your reserves, apply for additional funding from CPA. They've always been very open.
But why wouldn't CPA do the same thing that Chelsea's doing, which is commit to a certain number right now to say that the Affordable Housing Trust isn't going to even have to come back and apply? Given the crisis, we're going to be leaders in this community. We're going to provide for people who are in need. The CPC could say right now, we're giving you $250,000 to this. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not going to speak for the entire committee, but the money is already there.
But they would have to apply for. So why don't we have CPC come in and we can even meet jointly with the Affordable Housing Trust, work out a plan, and allow this program to go into place. We can start advertising it sooner rather than later, as soon as humanly possible.
And as Dan said, we are working on getting, the Affordable Housing Trust is working on getting somebody to help do this. It's not as easy as turning on a light switch. People have to be vetted. You can't just hand money out. It's a very long process. So Ed, we're going to move on because this meeting is already so late and we're just going to keep going back and forth. We definitely have different.
Yes, I think we definitely do, but I just wanted to come up with a roadmap so we can tell the public that we're working on something by a certain date. Other communities already have this established and are moving forward, and they actually moved forward a couple months ago. I want to know from the CPC and from the Affordable Housing Trust when we can expect a program.
Well, they will meet and they will get back to you because it's their purview. So.
Okay.
All right, we're going to go back to correspondence. Pete, oh, I'm sorry, Doreen.
Yeah, as someone who's still getting up to speed on the Affordable Housing Trust, and Dan, thank you for coming in this evening. So just to confirm, this conversation is about the rental assistance will continue in tomorrow night's meeting? Because I'm planning on
Yes,
attending.
it's the first agenda item we have.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your time, Dan. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me here.
Okay, correspondence. Peter, I don't believe there is any, is there?
Just, Madam Chair, there's 2 correspondence from Mark Johnson asking general questions with regards to library timeline and change orders. He was asked not to read them out loud, so in the in the spirit of time, I don't want to read those out loud, but I hope that town administrator may be able to address some of those questions because as a technical nature, that's about it.
Okay. Revitalization of Recycling Green Committee, Doreen.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to pass over this agenda item tonight and to put it on a future agenda maybe next week due to the time. I just think it's not vital we talk about it tonight. We can wait.
Okay, sorry. We have a question from Justin. How often does the Affordable Housing Trust meet? And do you think we'll have more information as that we can provide residents as of town meeting? That would be a good venue to start to get the word out with. Dan answered that we're going to meet tomorrow. Typically, Affordable Housing Trust meets monthly. All right. Yes, Doreen, you want to put this on next week's agenda? Okay. Yes. I'm fine with that. Everybody fine with that? Yep. Local tax relief program. Ed.
So this is something we discussed, it was last week. And we realized that the town of Mendon had been doing something called the Tax Aid Assistance Committee. What they did in Mendon was they, through town meeting, adopt something that's called Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 60, Section 3D, a program that allows a city or town to place on its municipal tax bills or motor vehicle excise tax bills or to mail with such tax bills a voluntary checkoff where you can donate or pledge money not less than $1 to go into a designated fund for tax relief. Unfortunately, the Commonwealth leaves municipalities with very little wiggle room for creativity about how to fashion municipal tax relief. And this is something that I think they threw out there that a few towns have taken advantage of. I'm not entirely confident that in ordinary times, adding a section on a tax form that you can voluntarily pay a little bit more in taxes would garner a whole heck of a lot of income. However, I think we are in a unique situation here, and especially these days where GoFundMe's for worthy causes generally find themselves fairly well funded. If we were to advertise this correctly, we could actually, if you were to market this as, a GoFundMe by any other phrase, you could actually get some money into a fund that would help to offset taxes for local residents. Now, in the town of Mendon, what they did was they established a committee of no fewer than 5 people, consisting of the chair of the Board of Assessors, the town treasurer, and 3 residents appointed by the selectmen. They take the pool of money and they redistribute it out. Now, why on earth the Commonwealth has it that you have to actually collect money to redistribute it to aid in your taxes? I don't know. I don't know why you wouldn't just collect applications and then at the end point deduct a certain amount of taxes owed, but this is the law and this is the way it's written. My understanding, I think, and Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have not specifically adopted Chapter 60, Section 3D. We would need to do that by a town meeting vote, and the soonest, obviously, we can do that is October. Nevertheless, what we still can do, whether or not we have instituted Chapter 60, Section 3D, is vote to establish the Taxation Aid Assistance Committee comprised of the assessor, the chair of the Board of Assessors, the treasurer, and 3 residents appointed by the selectmen. What Mendon did is they kept this as a revolving committee whose mission was to share information available on existing aid programs, to investigate and explore new programs that might be available, and to make recommendations on those programs to the Board of Selectmen. In addition, once Chapter 60, Section 3D was implemented, then they were the ones who ran through the applications and ran the program. So that would be my suggestion, to, at the very least, establish that taxation aid committee.
Becca, do you want to put up the screen of what he's saying? Okay, so this needs to be altered a little bit because of the wording is not quite fit for us. Doesn't fit us exactly, but
You know what's sad is I actually wrote that and I forgot we're a select board, but yeah.
all right. Any questions from members? All right, I'm not seeing any questions. Donna's the only one I can't see. Oh, Doreen.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Through you to Ed, I just want to clarify something I'm not certain on. So before town meeting approves MGL 60 Section 3D, what would the role of the committee be? I need a little clarification on that, please.
Yeah, no, I understand. The role of the committee would be to continue to explore taxation aid opportunities that would come up between now and then. It could very well be that there aren't any. But the benefit of establishing this committee now was so that if we actually did adopt Chapter 60, Section 3D, and I can't fathom why we wouldn't, that committee could hit the ground running and begin to distribute aid as soon as humanly possible.
Okay. Did everybody have a chance to read this? Can we take it down for the rest of the discussion? Any other questions? Okay. Certainly we need to help people as much as we can. And if this fund, if we're able to do so in this way, I mean, I'm for it. Again, I'm not sure of the specific wording and that thing, but I definitely think we should do it. I don't know if we're ready to adopt it tonight, but I certainly can put it on an upcoming agenda. I think, it doesn't quite fit the way we do our committees, the charge and all that sort of stuff. I think if we fill it out as a charge and fill out, I mean, I'm receptive of the idea. I just don't know if it's fully baked yet.
Okay.
Anybody else? Doreen?
I don't want to take long due to the time and stuff, but I agree with you, Jen, and I'm in favor of it too. We can just hash out the details.
Okay. We will put it on a future agenda and just with a more complete charge, fleshed out a little bit. All right. Are we any other? Oh, Doreen?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just one more question I thought of that just came up, and that is staff members being involved. I just want to ask the question. I mean, how much, like, how do we typically do that if we have staff members on committees? Do we give them the courtesy of talking to them about it first? What's the time commitment to them? It's just a question I think we should, and maybe not tonight, but before we vote on it, something that may, should be addressed, at least through our town administrator.
Okay. Committee governance policies, Donna.
Yeah, I'm going to request that we put this on next week's agenda as well, given the time. And actually, that's one of the things that I didn't add, but I think I'd like to add for future discussion is putting a time limit on our meetings and then having, after that time is expired, having a vote to see whether or not we continue. I think the planning board may have that same thing, but we had one meeting that went till 12:15 in the morning. So I think it's not, we're doing a disservice to ourselves to stay awake that long, and also to the people that would have to stay on that long. So that isn't in there right now, and that's one thing that I'd probably like to recommend. I will tell you, I think I indicated this, that this is primarily mirrored off of the school committee policies in terms of committee formation and organization, etc. And then the social media policy that I put in came from the town of Easton, but there are other similar policies out there. So, but given the time and given the extent of what's been just given to everybody since last Friday, I'd like to postpone this until next Tuesday.
Okay. Everybody agree? Okay. Becca, I know you had just one thing to update the board on the budget.
Sure. I just want to give a really brief update on the contingent budget for FY21. Talked about it in depth over the past few weeks. We did go back and take a look at some of those numbers that we were proposing to raise in the contingent budget. We did make a reduction from the library line, given the timeline around the construction. Those 2 additional staff people that we were initially going to bring on board, when we're going to put those off until FY22. Given some of the construction delays, so that's going to reduce the contingent budget by about $13,000. So that recommendation to raise and appropriate, that whole number is going to be reduced from about 832 down to about 818, which is unfortunately not going to reduce the impact to the taxpayer a whole lot with respect to numbers, but you know, given the construction timeline, it's the right move to put those people off until the beginning of FY22. So that was the only update I had for the board.
Okay, we don't have any minutes. I think
move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. So I didn't quite hear it, but I'm going to assume there was a second. Motion and a second by roll call.
Carlson, aye.
Alessio, aye.
Frisbee, aye.
Thomas, aye. Thank you, everybody. Good night.